me to another channel for everybody in the YouTube stream. I'm not quite sure what the finagly doogly is going on, and that's a technical term in case anyone was wondering, and it absolutely is, and hello. And let's see, let me grab a note and believe, yes, for the record, in case you're watching, Donald Trump has indeed gone AWOL for the day. He's meeting with Republicans, and which basically means since he did the last one on camera, he is doing this one in since the last one was on camera, it was pretty much an ass-kissing fest. This time around, and hey, let's see if I can, I'm going to go to my own channel and pop everybody over to the YouTube so everybody sees that we're going live on here as well. Oh, there you go. How are you? Okay, so everybody's jumping into this chamber. Let me share that with the other chat room because there was a little bit of a silliness going on. And let's see, I'll grab this one so that everybody can get in here. Let's see, follow that link. The for whatever reason, the boink, and we'll start up. Hi, everybody. How's it going? Good to see you. Hello and welcome. Such a pleasure. Hope everybody's in here. Hope everybody can see everybody. There you go. I think that's us gathering. I like using YouTube Studio within their software, within their website. It's cool. It's got a lot of options. It helps me see when people have super chatted really well. It's easy to organize. I can keep track of who's who. It's better with the icons and all that kind of stuff. However, there's two versions of going live still available on YouTube that go through Restream, and one works and the other one's very glitchy. So here we are. So hop over to that link. Let everybody know in that chat room that we're over at this one now. Aw, thanks, and thank you, Espresso, for that right away. And I think we fixed a good deal of our, affectations in the stream and whatnot. I'm piecing through it, anyways. And hi, everybody that's in the Discord as well, who's hanging out and grooving with us as well. Again, there's two active Discords, as you know, because I'm always one to fill my plate with a bunch of extra stuff. So there you go. Hey, Gary in Panama. I envy your little house that you showed us. My God, man. And thanks to Summer for going to Black Rock and getting me a ginormous beverage. It's very innocent looking, but it's potent. I need only sip it because it is full of the engine-y. So yeah, so everybody, I know people are wondering, hey, Hal, if you're doing the entire show basically as ongoing Trump soup, and you're ridiculing him during these absurd press gaggles that he throws together to cover his ass, and especially when it was the task force briefings. I mean, what are you going to do, man, when it goes away? Where are you going to mine the stupid if you've if Donald Trump isn't on television, whatever shall you do? Well, it shouldn't come as anybody's surprise that, hi, Joe Carter. Sorry you having trouble getting into Discord. Moto or anybody who's in there who can help her out, please jump on Jill Carter with both feet and assist her in helping to get in there. It's kind of fun once you get used to it. It's also, if you have children, a great way to keep track of what the hell they're doing most of the time. But that's it. So how am I going to have a show if we're running low on stupidity? Well, where did you ever think that we were going to run low on stupidity? And today, now I will not be able to do all of the video that I'm about to talk over because it's 3.5 hours long. It's ridiculous. So I will be jumping around a little bit. But this is the live Senate hearing, gathering, gaggle, flail about, wherein Dr. Fauci and the other crowd spoke to the Senate today. And the amount of, I don't know, intellectual flailing, verbal flabbergastery, self-appreciative ignorance is stunning. Now, normally you would get to see this in one person in the form of Donald Trump, but in this case it is spread out over 6 or 10 people. The SCOTUS stuff was terrific, but it's all audio, so until such time as I can get some puppets that look like all these characters, we're gonna. And by the way, don't think I'm not working on that. Oh boy, if I could get some puppets that look like Clarence Thomas and Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I'm many ways the Alito and all those crowds, those could be some pretty sweet, puppets as well. Yeah, sock puppets would be a great way of doing it. I mean, they don't have to be high tech at all. So, in terms of this, okay, so this has got to be a. I don't know why the. Oh, I see the super chats just make a different noise. It's fine, whatever. So, well, let's just get into it because we're going to spend all of our time funking around with this nonsense, and it's just going to take up most of our day. And you guys have better things to do than listen to these, gaggle monsters actually decide to do this. So, with that, I give you Lamar Alexander, who apparently is, thank you, Joyce, is apparently coming to us live from the Bohemian Grove or some underground. Yes, by the way, patrons, for better or worse, and anybody who wants that in the super chats, that's what your money's going to be going to, is the purchase of or the creation of SCOTUS puppets and potential, I don't know what I'm going to use for a Secolo one. It might just be a giant ladle with a mouth on it. I haven't figured that part of it out. So feel free to hit us up with those as they go. Now, that said, here we go.
Police, committee staff, Chun Shek and Evan Griffiths, all for their hard work to keep.
Now he... That's so loud. It's amazing. I don't know why the super chat one is loud and everything else is quiet. It's crazy pants overall, but here we go.
Let's say. At our hearing last Thursday, I said that all roads back to work and back to school run through testing, and that what our country has done so far on testing is impressive.
I have to, every time we get a super chat, I have to turn it off so I can actually hear what's going on. But thank you, that's
but
awesome.
Not nearly enough. Over the weekend, Senator Schumer, the Democratic leader, was nice enough to put out a tweet quoting half of what I said. He left out the other half.
Which was what?
The impressive part. So let me say again what I meant by that.
Okay. Explain to us what you meant.
When I said impressive, I meant that according to the Johns Hopkins University study, the United States has tested over 9 million Americans for COVID-19. That's twice as many as any other country. We don't know what China has done.
Tell me about those other countries. Tell me about those other countries and their populations. Are we twice as many people as countries that have 1/8 of our population? Is that impressive? Is that the impressive part? Let me see.
And it's more per capita than most countries, including South Korea.
That's because they bent their curve and solved their problem already.
Which many members of our committee had cited as an example of a country that had tested well.
Right. Yeah. And. Right. And.
According to Dr. Deborah Birx, the United States.
Oh, yeah. Well, Birx has been going hard on the administration.
States will double testing in the month of May, which should get us up.
The month of, is that the month of Way? Is that right after the month of Kurds? No, the month of Kurds is the one where we left them to die because your boss told them to go to hell because what'd they do? Help us fight ISIS? Oh, Kurds and Way. There you go.
To about 10 million tests conducted. Now, here's what I mean by impressive here in Tennessee, where I am today. First.
Really? I wouldn't have guessed Tennessee. I would have guessed Colonial Williamsburg, or is there an Amish IKEA? Does that exist?
Anyone who's sick, first responder, or healthcare worker can get tested. Our governor, Bill Lee, is also testing every prisoner.
No. Hey, thanks. All right.
Every resident and staff member in a nursing home. He's offered weekend drive-through testing. He's done specific outreach for testing to
Weekend drive-through testing so they can get tested once a week. End. Huh?
low-income communities. A Tennessean can get a free test at the local public health department. The governor's slogan is, if in doubt, get a test. Governor Lee sent his testing goals
Is it now?
in May to the federal government, as every state has done. Federal government is helping him make sure that he has enough supplies in case he has trouble getting them through the labs and the other commercial sources.
Yeah, you won't have problems with that because you're in a situation where you have labs that can do 500 to 1,000 tests at a time. You have somewhere in the order of 5 million or 2.5 million testing kits, but only 1.2 million swabs. So I don't think you're going to see a bottleneck in the labs anytime soon. I think you see a bottleneck in the gathering area. This is a design problem, not a launch problem.
As a result, our state has tested about 4% of the population. The governor hopes to increase that by 7% in May.
Wait, so you're increasing it to 7% or by 7% or 7% more than the 4%? I'm going to need more numbers.
That's one of the best.
Grizzly Adams apple. Let's go.
This impressive level of testing is sufficient, we believe, to begin phase one of going back to work. But as I said last week, it's not nearly enough.
No. Yeah, you can stop right there. It's not nearly enough.
To provide confidence to 31,000 students and faculty members, what we hope will show up at the University of Tennessee campus in August when school starts.
What, do you only have one university in the entire state? So Vanderbilt can go screw itself, right?
Last week, I talked with UT Knoxville Chancellor Don D. Plowman about that. We said, what would persuade those 31,000 students, as well as the 50 million K through 12 students in the country and the other 5,000 university students, what will persuade them to go back to campus?
And we came up with stank weed. That would probably be the number one thing. Free stank weed. That'll get them down there. And anything short of that, being able to drink at ball games. And we think that heavy alcohol and drug consumption will help some of them forget that we just kind of shrugged off the death of their grandmama.
In August. That's where the new Shark Tank comes in. Dr. Collins at the National Institutes of Health calls it RADx. We had our hearing about that on Thursday. It's a really remarkable scientific exercise to take a few early stage concepts that are swimming around in what we call that competitive Shark Tank and see if Dr. Collins and his associates can find a few new technologies to create millions of new tests that will scale up rapidly and make it.
Who cares if they work? You know, just rush it. Rush the whole thing. Go ahead.
More likely that students will go back to school in August. For example, the FDA authorized last week its first diagnostic test using saliva.
Ew.
That a person provides at home instead of a nose swab or blood. It authorized its first antigen test. We're hearing a lot about those, like the ones used for flu or strep throat, which involves the swabbing of a nose, and you can get the result in just a few minutes. Another proposal, not yet approved, is to put in your mouth a sort of lollipop sponge.
Who can take the COVID? Keep it from killing you. Everyone knows if your nose blows, the lollipop can. What in the world?
Take a photo of that with your cell phone and send that to your doctor. If it lights up, you're positive.
Wait, what? What? What kind of what? We got an electric lollipop you're gonna suck on? What kind of HR puffing stuff?
Diagnostic test using saliva that a person provides at home instead of a nose swab or blood. It authorized its first antigen test. We're hearing a lot about those, like the ones used for flu or strep throat, which involves the swabbing of a nose, and you can get the result in just a few minutes. Another proposal, not yet approved, is to put in your mouth a sort of lollipop sponge. Take a photo of that with your cell phone and send that to your doctor. If it lights up, you're positive. Or the university might send
The lollipop sponge.
that saliva lollipop to a nearby laboratory, which could be a gene sequencing laboratory, which
So we're just going to get into coding every American's genome, and that's how. How many of you think that post COVID-19 we're just going to be replacing our social security numbers with lollipop sponges? Like when you show up at a job site, you're going to go on something like that, and they'll go, "Yep, it's him."
can deal with thousands
Yeah, Gene Simmons wouldn't even have to send the picture in; he could just do it from far away.
Of those samples overnight. That same process could occur at a middle school. It could occur at a factory.
You pervert.
Of course, anyone testing negative one day can test positive the next, but such
By negative, we mean anybody who gets a positive, and by positive, that's a negative. So is that clear? I'd like to interject here, so it can be abundantly clear that everybody, knows what we're talking about here. That a negative is technically if you get a positive, that's negative, and if you get a negative, that's positive. Please continue, Lamar.
widespread
Lamar.
screening of entire campuses, schools, or places of work will help identify those who are sick, trace down those who are exposed, and that in turn.
Oh my God, his cat just moved on his countertop. Wait 1 second. I've got to move this over. Hold the phone for a second there. Okay, wait. All right, I'm moving him up a little bit just for this next piece. So right near my right shoulder, right here. That I thought he was one of those people who has like a animal fur on his, like a tribble, just sitting on his desk. And watch this. This is.
And you can get the result in just a few minutes. Another proposal, not yet approved,
just still
is to put in your mouth a sort of lollipop sponge.
A lollipop sponge.
Take
Okay,
a photo of that with your cell phone and send that to your doctor. If it lights up your.
Oh, thanks, Rob. That's awesome. I appreciate you guys. I'm dead serious about making SCOTUS puppet show. That's really the way it's got to go.
Positive. Or the university might send that saliva lollipop to a nearby laboratory, which could be a gene sequencing laboratory, which can deal with.
Will help us track everyone. Now, we don't necessarily need that. All the people in Tennessee who've been abducted by aliens, we just use their anal probe, because we have a deal with the aliens that Eisenhower put together, and they drop them off in a little dispensary outside of town. They just fly over and just drop them straight in. That's just weird.
Thousands of those samples overnight. That same process could occur at a middle school. It could occur at a factory.
As soon as the phone rings.
Of course, anyone testing negative one day can test positive the next, but such widespread screening of entire campuses, schools, or places of work will help identify those who are sick, trace down those who are exposed. That
see
in
it?
turn should
Cat
help
just
persuade
stretched.
the rest of us.
See the cat stretch
to
in the
go back to
background?
school and back to work. In addition to more testing, I expect Dr. Fauci
It's
to
alive.
talk to us about additional treatments that will be available to reduce the risk.
Yeah, mail in your spittle pop. What could be better? That's right. Just everybody just spit in an envelope and mail it to attention Lamar Alexander, County Road 75, Pork Knuckle, Tennessee.
Of death, and the administration.
Is it a dog? I think it's a cat. I'm going with cat.
Plan to do something that our country's never done before, which is to start manufacturing a vaccine before it actually has been proven to work, in order to speed up the result in case it does work.
That sounds great. It's a great position to be in, folks. That's where we are right now. They are green lighting the production of a vaccine before it actually works. And by the way, when it doesn't work, it's just not neutral. It can kill you. But they're going to speed that part of it up so that we can just get it out there if it does turn out to work.
Those vaccines, those treatments are the ultimate solution. But until we have them,
Oh, they're not. The treatments are probably the ultimate solution at this point. And then treating the economy like we're walking on thin ice for a little while and slowly getting people out there. Yeah. What does SCOTUS stand for? Supreme Court of the United States.
All roads back to work and school go through testing. The more tests we conduct, the better we can identify those who are sick and exposed, and we can quarantine the sick and exposed instead of trying to quarantine the whole country. Now, in my opinion, this requires millions of new tests, many from new technology.
If it's a cat, I want a refund. Why? That's terrible. Unless you pay Lamar, do you pay Lamar Alexander's? Do you pay his salary? Do you live in Tennessee?
Some of these will fail, but we only need a few successes to get where we want to go.
Can I, for the record, could there be more fear in my life than this man saying most of them will fail?
That's why I said on Thursday that what our country had done so far in testing is impressive, but not nearly enough. First, squeeze all the tests we can out of current technologies. Next, try to find new technologies to help us contain the disease and persuade us to go back.
Right.
Now, one other thing. This is a bipartisan hearing to examine how well we're preparing to go safely back to work and to school, and to determine what else we need to do in the United States Senate. Such an exercise sometimes encourages finger pointing. Before we spend too much time finger pointing,
how much is too much time finger pointing?
I'd like to suggest that almost all of us, the United States and almost every country, so far as I can tell, underestimated this virus, underestimated how contagious it would be, underestimated how it can travel silently in people without symptoms.
The invisible killer is invisible to the killing of the killer killing.
To infect other people. How it can be especially deadly for certain segments of our population, the elderly, those with pre-existing conditions, minority populations. Let me go back to the March 3rd hearing that we had in our committee on coronavirus.
Let's do that.
6 weeks after the first case was discovered in the United States, a day when only 2 deaths were recorded in this country. I read at that hearing this paragraph from the New York Times 2 days earlier on March the 1st. They reported this: much about the coronavirus remains unclear, the Times reported, and it's far from certain, this is March 3rd, March 1, that the outbreak will reach severe proportions in the United States or affect many regions at once. With its top-notch scientists, modern hospitals, and sprawling public health infrastructure, most experts agree the United States is among the countries best prepared to prevent or manage such an epidemic. That was the New York Times on March 1. A lot of effort has gone into trying to make our country well prepared. Over the last 20 years, 4 presidents, several Congresses, in response to 9/11, bird flu, Katrina, Ebola, H1N1, MERS, passed 9 major laws to try to help get this country ready for what we're going through today.
Wait. Sorry. Previous administrations did what now? And they were blown off by what? Who? What was the bottleneck in taking what we cared about and throwing it out the window? All right.
These laws stood up the Strategic National Stockpile, created an assistant secretary for preparedness. It created incentives for the developments of vaccines and medicines that we're using today, strengthened the Centers for Disease Control.
Hold on. Sorry, I sneeze. It's like a tick every time somebody mentions where our stockpiles were wasted.
Control created BARDA, thanks to the leadership of Senator Blunt and Senator Murray. For 5 straight years, we've significantly increased funding for the National Institutes of Health. All this was part of
but then who came along and decided to cut the CDC by 15%?
Shared goal. Democrats, Republicans,
and whatever Trump is.
4 presidents, several Congresses.
4 presidents? So we're not including this one?
Try to get ready for what we're going through today, whether it was known like anthrax or unknown like COVID-19. But despite all that effort, even the experts underestimated COVID-19. This hearing is about how we improve our response to this virus as well as the next one. During the oversight hearing, I also intend to focus on, as I just said, the next pandemic, which we know is coming. What can we learn from this one to be ready for the next one?
How about not on the next one? Nobody's allowed to say, no one could have imagined something like this could ever have happened. Not, and this is the greatest response you could possibly have. How about something along those lines? You want to throw that out there?
What can we learn from the fast tracking of vaccines and treatments that we're about to hear about that will make it even faster the next time?
Gee.
How can we keep hospitals and states from selling off protective equipment when their budget gets tight? How can we make sure Congress does our share of the funding responsibility? How do we provide enough extra hospital beds without canceling elective surgery, hurting other patients, and bankrupting hospitals? Whose job should it be to coordinate supply lines so that...
I would go with the federal government. I would say you would have, let's see, there's a legislative, and there's a judicial, and then there's some branch where the UN, no, let's see, who was, there was it involves the I know, the executive truth, the executive branch, they execute things. Maybe talk to them. Maybe the executive could executive things, like carry them out. Like these guys talk about it, these guys check and see if it's in line with the Constitution. These guys fund it. Those guys make sure the funding is not in violation of the Constitution. And then one group executes the whole thing. So there you go.
Protective equipment and supplies get where they're supposed to go when they're supposed to go. What's the best way to manage the stockpile? My preacher once...
Here's a good idea. Replenish it. Replenish all the parts that break down on a schedule, like adults.
Said, I'm not worried about what you do on Sunday. It's the rest of the week that concerns me.
Because you backed up this dude who grabs women by the vagina and then allows himself to quote 2 Corinthians in the middle of everything.
I'm afraid that during the rest of the week between pandemics, we relax our focus on preparedness.
Oh, do we? Oh, do we? So between the AIDS crisis and the H1N1 and Ebola breakouts, was there a relaxation problem? Or did somebody else post those things relax?
We become
This is Lamar Alexander,
preoccupied with other important...
senior senator from Tennessee and chairman of the committee on oversight of something or other.
things. Our collective memory is short. Just 3 months ago, this country was preoccupied with impeaching a president.
Were we? Sorry. I'm sorry. The country was preoccupied. The country, guys, it was our fault. We were. Did you guys know you were supposed to keep the stockpile stocked and prepare for a pandemic? I was so caught up in the impeachment, I didn't even realize. I didn't know that. Did you? I'm sorry, guys. I owe everyone in America an apology. I was so distracted with impeachment that I did not realize that I was supposed to personally restock the N95 masks in storage so that they would not rot and fall apart while they sat there for years, because you need to use them within 3 years for their full efficacy. And I did not realize how I had let the maintenance contract on the ventilators in the stockpile to lapse. I was so busy. Oh, gosh, guys. You know what? I gotta shut this down. We can't do any more streams. Obviously I'm wasting my time doing this. I'm probably forgetting to, reinforce the cement on all the dams across the country. And if Hoover collapses, it's because I was dicking around on the internet.
Now that seems like ancient Roman history.
Why Roman? Because we were all throwing up.
Now, while this crisis has
Do you really want to talk about ancient Roman history when your leader acts like he eats off lead plates all the time?
our full attention, I believe we should put into law this year whatever improvements need to be made to be well prepared for the next pandemic. If there is to be finger pointing, hope they're pointed in that direction.
What direction? Towards the future? I blame tomorrow. That's the GOP. We blame the morning.
We're fortunate today to have 4 distinguished witnesses who are at the heart of the response to the coronavirus. We're
And Trump doesn't want to talk to any of them right
grateful
now.
for their service to our country.
They're all currently in quarantine because they have either tested positive for COVID-19 or been around jackasses who don't wear masks who have.
I've asked them each to summarize their remarks in 5 minutes. Then we'll have 5-minute round of questions from each senator. I've agreed
good.
we'll end our hearing about 12:30 after we have a full round of questions. Every senator will have a chance to have his or her 5 minutes. Senator Murray will then have an opportunity to ask the last question or to close the hearing, and I will then close the hearing. There will be other hearings to follow this hearing, like last Thursday's hearing,
That's what I'm hearing.
and senators may submit their questions in writing within the next 10 days.
Is that really a hearing or a reading?
Staying at home indefinitely is not
Can you call it a hearing if you're not hearing the things, if you're reading them? Like, we'll follow this hearing with a reading.
the solution to this pandemic. There is not enough money available to help all those hurt by a closed economy. All roads back to work and back to school lead through testing, tracking, isolation, treatment, and vaccines.
You don't have to tell me that. Tell the leader of your party.
This requires widespread testing, millions more tests.
Widespread testing just sounds painful. It does. It's got a little kind of a, well, how do I put it?
Moon River.
Widespread testing.
You using the whole fist, Doc?
All right.
Created mostly by new technologies to identify those who are sick and who've been exposed so they can be quarantined, and by containing the disease in this way, give the rest of America enough confidence to go back to work and school. For the near term, to help
Even if they are walking funny.
make sure those 31,000 UT students and faculty members show up in August, we need widespread testing.
Thank you, Doc. You ever serve time?
Millions more tests created mostly by new technologies to identify those who are sick and who have been exposed so they can be quarantined. By containing the disease in this way, give the rest of America enough confidence to go back to work and back to school. Senator Murray.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My thoughts are with you.
Senator Murray's doing this from home too. By the way, what you just saw there was a shot of the people who are in committee actually present.
And your team right now, as you try to navigate the same challenge so many in our country are worried about.
Except for the fact that you have to talk to President Dipshit every day.
We all wish
The
your
rest of us are just wrestling with a virus and a shutdown economy. You are wrestling with a virus, a shutdown economy, and a doped up maniac.
staff member a speedy recovery. And as everyone works to take appropriate safety precautions today, I'd like to thank not only our witnesses for joining us today, but also our committee staff for working to set up a safe format for members and witnesses and the public to participate in this hearing remotely.
That's right. I'm wearing a mask right now just watching this. I'm just not wearing it on my face because I'm worried about widespread testing.
Moon River.
Families across the country are counting on us for the truth about the COVID-19 pandemic, especially since it is clear they will not get it from President Trump. Truth is essential, so people have the facts.
By the way, everything she says is sensible and reasonable, so we can skip past her because we get he introduces Fauci.
This hearing, it's an important hearing, and I know lots of people may be watching it for the first time. If they are, I hope they notice that we have 23 members of this committee, I believe, one more Republican than Democrat. We have some very strong views, but we're able to work together and to express those views and respect each other and our witnesses. And a big part of that goes to Senator Murray and her staff. So thank you for that.
Yeah, to Senator Murray, I would like to say,
I couldn't think of a more horrible job if I wanted to. And you have to do it.
okay.
Each witness will have up to 5 minutes to give his testimony. Thank you for making an exception and agreeing to testify by video because of these unusual circumstances. And thank you for what you're doing for our country. Our first witness is Dr. Anthony Fauci. He's director of the National Institutes of Allergy and Infectious Diseases at the National Institutes of Health. He's held that position since 1984, which meant he's advised 6 presidents and worked on HIV, AIDS, influenza, malaria, Ebola, and other infectious diseases.
Yeah, but he does not know as much as Donald Trump about these issues, because Donald Trump's uncle taught for like a record number of years at MIT, and he just is his natural inclination. If he hadn't been president, he would probably be an expert accidentally in infectious disease. So whatever Fauci says, hear it through that lens, people, please.
He was involved in treating Ebola patients at NIH and also worked on vaccine trials for Ebola.
And how'd that work out for you? Remember when we shut down the economy for Ebola? You remember that? That was horrible.
Next,
People think 2008 was about credit default swaps. No.
we'll hear from Dr. Robert Redfield. He's director of the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, which has its headquarters in Atlanta. More than 30 years, he's been involved with clinical research related to chronic human viral infections, infectious diseases, especially HIV. He was the founding director of the Department of Retroviral Research within the U.S. military's HIV research program. He spent 20 years with the U.S. Army Medical Corps. Third, Admiral Brett Giroir.
Yeah, that's a hard one to spell. What is it? Geroir? Giroir.
Admiral Giroir is Assistant
Giroir.
Secretary for Health at the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. That puts him in charge of development of public health policy recommendations. He's taken on the responsibility for coordinating testing and
Has he now?
focused on the increasing number of tests that we can do with existing technology. His federal service includes a variety of activities with our Defense Department in advanced research, threat reduction. He was part of the Blue Ribbon Panel to reform the U.S. Veterans Health System. And finally, we'll hear from Dr. Stephen Hahn. He's
O'Hara's treachery has disgraced us.
Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration. Before joining FDA, he was the chief medical executive of the University of Texas MD Anderson.
Thanks. I'm glad you like the Redfield reference. It's just every time they bring up his name. And Han, of course, is an Enter the Dragon reference. If you don't get that one, I'm going to have to grab that sample eventually.
Cancer Center. He was chair of the Department of Radiation Oncology at the University of Pennsylvania.
Before he was drummed out before they drove him out of town on the horse he rode in on.
He was a senior investigator at the National Institutes of Health. He was commander of the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps in 2025.
Thank you, Benny Loco, reminding everybody to give us a thumbs up on that stream right now. Come on. Education, comedy, silliness, and quality entertainment. Let me tell you. All right, so who else in the world has this sample ready to go just in case?
How, in the name of Zeus's butthole, did you get out of your cell?
That's my I've got that prepped in case Flynn makes a statement.
5. Now we'll ask each of our witnesses to summarize their remarks in 5 minutes. Following that, each senator will have 5 minutes for questions and answers in order of seniority. Dr. Fauci, let's begin with you. Welcome.
Yeah. Okay, here comes some crazy, sensible normalcy. I apologize for this. I try to keep this off my show, but sometimes it just happens.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Murray, and members of the committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to discuss with you today the role of the National Institutes of Health.
So we need more shit for him to read. First of all, unless he's just sitting on books.
Research addressed.
And watch the guy in the back corner up there. This, like, I thought it was a reflection the first time I saw it for a couple of seconds, but it's, you know, he's got an assistant out there or somebody always on the phone. Dude's wearing a mask. They're not effing around.
COVID-19. The strategic plan that we have is fourfold. One, to improve our fundamental knowledge of the virus and the disease it causes. Next, to develop new point-of-care diagnostics. Next, to characterize and test therapeutics. And finally, to develop safe and effective vaccines. First, with regard to diagnostics. As you probably heard from Dr. Francis Collins last Thursday, the
I didn't get to hear from that, actually.
NIH has developed a rapid acceleration of diagnostics program called RADx.
RADx, bruh. Come on, man. RADx. It sounds like a graphics card that I so need to get.
Award to that specific.
RADx. Jesus. Can we get some boomers back in there? Do we have, like, honest to God? That's what happens when you put Gen Xers like me in charge of stuff. RADx. Hey, dude, let's party.
Specific program up to $500 million to support the development of COVID-19 diagnostics.
Up to?
It is a national call for innovative technologies that will be evaluated in a Shark Tank-like selection process to get to either success or failure rapidly. Moving on to therapeutics.
This is where we are, ladies and gentlemen. It is 2020, and we're looking for the Shark Tank folks to find the most RADx anti-vax for the market, bruh. Oh, God.
I'll talk a bit about the remdesivir success antiviral in a moment.
Excuse me, it's pronounced remdesivir.
But let me emphasize that there are a number of broad-spectrum antivirals that are in various stages of testing. In addition, we will be looking at convalescent plasma, which is plasma from individuals
who are in old folks' homes
who've recovered from COVID-19.
See, I got that wrong.
To be used in passive transfer, either in prevention or treatment. In addition, hyperimmune globulin, which can be
globulin. Say that 10 times fast. Globulin.
Used as a gamma globulin shot.
Ooh, I want a gamma globulin shot. When do we get that? Sounds like something that happened to a character in Lord of the Rings. The gamma globulin was shot.
We'll be looking at
almost broke my tongue trying to say it.
Repurposed drugs, as well as immune-based therapies and host modifiers, and finally, monoclonal antibodies. Let me take a moment to describe the remdesivir placebo-controlled randomized trial, which was done internationally with the power of.
Oh, by the way, kids, I have figured out what Trump was talking about hydroxychloroquine and zinc and light inside the body. I saw where he saw what he thinks he saw and how it got into his head. Yeah. Goblin globulin is like, I mean, that will save us.
More than 1,000 individuals in sites throughout the world. It was in hospitalized patients with lung disease. The endpoint was primarily time to recovery. The result was statistically significant, but really modest. And we must remember, it was only a
just like Dr. Fauci.
Modest result, showing that the drug made a 31% faster time to recovery. We hope to build on this modest success with combinations of drugs and better drugs. Moving on to vaccines. There are at least 8 candidate COVID-19
Thank you, Patricia.
vaccines in clinical development. The NIH has been collaborating with a number of pharmaceutical companies at various stages,
also known as the
of development. I will describe one very briefly, which is not the only one, but one that we have been involved in heavily developing with Moderna. It's a messenger RNA platform. You might recall in this committee that in January of this year, I said that it would take about 1 year to 18 months if we were successful in developing a vaccine.
Wait, in January, in front of this committee, you said it would take a year to 18 months to come up with a vaccine for something that didn't exist and was a Democratic hoax? Why is the NIH and the CDC bothering themselves trying to come up with vaccines for Democratic hoaxes? Is there a shot that Trump can get to get rid of the Russiagate? I mean, honestly.
The NIH trial moved very quickly. On January 10th,
Happy birthday, Patricia.
the sequence was known. On January the 11th, the Vaccine Research Center met to develop a plan. On the 14th of January, we officially started the vaccine development. 62 days later, we are now in phase 1 clinical trial with the 2 doses already fully enrolled. There will be animal safety. The phase 1 will directly go into phase 2-3 in late spring and early summer. And if we are successful, we hope to know that in the late fall and early winter. There are some important issues, however, in COVID-19 vaccine development.
Oh, yeah? Tell me about those.
We have many candidates and hope to have multiple winners. In other words, it's multiple shots on goal. This will be important because this will be good for global availability if we have more than one successful candidate. We also, as the chairman mentioned, will be producing vaccine at risk, which means we'll be investigating considerable resources in developing doses even before we know any given candidate or candidate's work. I must warn that there's also the possibility of negative consequences, where certain vaccines can actually enhance the negative effect of the infection.
Yeah, like like some over-the-counter cough medicines turned out to do, which is what most people who are either poor or don't have insurance or are just kind of misinformed will go and get to treat what's going on when, because if you develop a cough, it must be cough medicine. That's what that's for, right? And you get rid of it. It turns out the main ingredient in a lot of over-the-counter cough medicines make COVID-19 worse.
The big unknown is efficacy. Will it be
Thank you, Templeton Zarat. Merci beaucoup, de rien.
present or absence, and how durable will it be? And finally, I want to mention the NIH has launched a public-private partnership called Accelerating COVID-19 Therapeutic Interventions and Vaccines. The purpose of that is to prioritize and accelerate clinical evaluation of therapeutic candidates with near-term potential. Hopefully, our research efforts, together with the other public health efforts, will get us quickly to an end to this terrible ordeal that we are all going through. Thank you very much. Happy to answer questions later.
Yeah, look out, Rand Paul's over here. Yeah, whatever, bruh.
Thank you, Doc.
Excuse me, I'm an eye doctor who gives himself awards. I think I know a thing or two about contagious disease, okay? French Hal? Ah, yes. Bonjour, ça va bien? Comment allez-vous?
Dr. Fauci. Dr. Redfield, welcome.
Good morning, Chairman Alexander and Ranking Member Murray and members of the committee.
It's Robert Redfield.
The nation is confronting the most serious public health crisis in more than a century.
I am judging your bookcases.
Yet we're not defenseless. We have power.
The dude has the dude's got the Grail on his shelf. He's actually got the Holy Grail and not the big shiny one. This is truly the cup of a carpenter right here. What's up?
Powerful tools to fight this enemy.
Everybody's got their own nerd channel that they
We
tune
have tried
to.
and true effective public health interventions, such as early case identification, isolation, and contact
What's that? On the far thing, is that a Mark Twain?
tracing, combined with important mitigation strategies.
And there's a carrot hat on top of there. I don't know what that is.
Include social distancing,
Opus
frequent
Dei.
hand washing, and face covering. These public health tools have and will continue to slow the spread of COVID-19.
If people do them, is the kind of
Appreciate the opportunity this morning to provide a brief overview of some of CDC's ongoing work in response to COVID-19. CDC has been working 24/7 to
Whoops. What was that?
combat the pandemic.
Was that on him or them?
CDC's Emergency Operations Center is supporting states
I've dealt with so many like technological issues that when their camera eats shit when they're in the middle of this thing, I think it's me.
tribal, local, and territorial public health partners
And Ezekiel and I will have a barn raising right after this, after we release our 13-year-olds into the wild.
in building core capabilities, particularly workforce, laboratory, and data and predictive analytics. Epidemiologists are conducting surveillance for COVID-19 as well as conducting health.
These are grown men in charge of important life and death issues, and they can't figure out how to tape their notes to the side of their monitor.
System surveillance. Community mitigation teams are providing guidance on infection control and contact.
I literally place the video that I'm looking at in a position so that it looks like I'm looking at it with my eyes when I'm interacting with it. I don't see it in the frame you guys see it in. I see it on another frame entirely. I made that happen so that there's some continuity in what you're seeing as a human being. Notice, as a grown man with some brains in my skull, that I'm not showing you the top of my head or my forehead during every show, because I've thought this through.
Tracing, and our laboratory experts are performing serological testing to better define the extent of asymptomatic populations. As local leadership makes decisions to reopen, they'll require varying degrees of federal support. Each location will be different and will face unique circumstances. CDC has conducted a state-by-state assessment of public health testing capacity and contact tracing capacity, as well as surge plans.
He's just dropping the paper on the floor. Do you notice that? When he finishes a page, he drops it on the floor.
CDC is
He does look like David Ogden Steyer's if he was found on a riverbank.
providing technical assistance and funding to the states provided through the Supplemental CARES Act and the Paycheck Protection Program and Health
Oh, the Paycheck Protection Act.
Follow the money.
Care
Okay.
Enhancement Act. We're working directly with the state public health leaders to define their needs for testing and testing devices, supplies, and manpower, surveillance, data collection and reporting, contact tracing.
Who are you looking at? He looks way up there. Is that where your monitor is, dude? Is it way up there? That's super weird. It looks like someone standing there with a shotgun. I'm just saying.
Infection control and outbreak investigation.
Random carrot. Yeah. That's the hat that he wears around.
We're honored to have with us today our amazing Vice President, Mike Pence, and his wonderful wife, Carrot.
Sorry. It's just he's wearing a Mike Pence hat. All right. I don't know who he's looking at. I mean, I know his monitor is up a little bit, but it looks like he's being held hostage.
I want to spend a moment to focus on several key elements.
Please do.
First, testing. Rapid, extensive, and widely available timely testing is essential for reopening America.
We got Max Redfield happening.
CDC's role in testing continues to support diagnosis and contact tracing, surveillance, and outbreak. And we work with the public health partners to define their particular testing strategy for their jurisdiction. Admiral Giroir will address the testing components of the response in greater detail. Contact tracing. Increasing
I'm digging the dance remix that we're getting from this
state,
video, though.
tribal, local, and territorial contact tracing capacity is critical. It's a critical part to stop the chains of transmission and prevent the occurrence of sustained community transmission.
Right.
CDC's role is to provide technical training, assistance, and support to the states as they hire and build a workforce necessary to be fully prepared to effectively respond to the public health challenges posed by the ongoing COVID pandemic.
And you're going to start that when?
This will be an expansive effort. Surveillance. Our nation's surveillance program is built on a combination of systems, including
Don't worry. They ask him questions. They ask Fauci questions, Andrea. You didn't miss anything. It's just an opening statement.
existing syndromic, influenza, and respiratory viral disease surveillance systems have been combined with commercial.
Is there a thing about the Surgeon General or the people in that position not having a mustache? Is that a thing? Because didn't we have a previous, who was the one under, was it Clinton's, that didn't have a mustache?
And research lab platforms and our case reporting form system. CDC is adapting these and optimizing it to have a surveillance system in response to COVID-19. Importantly, in light of the significant occurrence of asymptomatic infection, the surveillance for asymptomatic infection becomes an important public health.
Yeah, you're right. It was C. Everett Koop. That's right. Coop had the same kind of Amish beard situation.
Tool for early
And it was and Reno had the mustache. I hear
case
you.
identification. CDC is working with each public health jurisdiction to develop a prospective surveillance program to include active surveillance among those that are most vulnerable, such as individuals in long-term care facilities, inner-city clinics, and homeless shelters. We need to rebuild our nation's public health infrastructure.
Really? Did Obama leave the cupboards bare 3.5 years into the Trump administration?
Data analytics, public health laboratory resilience, and our nation's public health workforce.
Why do they call it surveillance? Isn't it contact tracing? Yes, surveillance is a part of the contact tracing thing. By surveillance, they mean like the ILI tracing system, the influenza-like illness system, and all that.
Now's the time to put it in place for the generations to come, not only for the public health system that our nation needs, but for the public health system
we deserve.
Our nation deserves.
Yeah, there
Before
we go.
I close, I want to recognize the tireless commitment of the dedicated CDC staff who've deployed to every corner of this nation to fight COVID-19. More than 4,000 employees have deployed here and globally. Science and data continue with technical expertise and public service to be the backbone of CDC's contributions to the U.S. response. I extend my serious gratitude to the healthcare workers in the front lines, as well as...
Doesn't help. I know that you do that. It's like, I'm at the point where anytime they start thanking the people on the front lines and all that stuff, that's just because they've run out of positive stuff to say, and they're just trying to gain points for pointing that out.
Their family and the essential emergency personnel, as well as the American people, to say
thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks, bro.
Thank you for adhering to the stay-at-home guidelines and protecting the most.
You think that's what they're doing? Have you been outside?
Vulnerable. It's important to emphasize that we're not out of the woods yet. Battle contends and we must, but we are more prepared. We need to stay vigilant with social distancing. It remains an imperative. We are a resilient nation, and I am confident that we will...
Oh, the screen went black? Am I back up? It seems fine on my end.
We'll emerge from this pandemic stronger together. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Redfield. Admiral...
Sorry, I have to do that every time.
Welcome.
Where are they going to? Trying to find somebody?
Here to provide you with an update on the nation's progress in testing for COVID-19.
Oh, God.
On March 12th, Secretary Azar requested that I lead the COVID-19 testing efforts within HHS, including oversight and coordination of the FDA.
And there is nothing logarithmical about this particular growth. So in terms of diagnostic tests, this is absolutely a normal factor of 20. Look how far back this goes. 22nd of March till now. How many of you are actually impressed by this graph? The last day on this is the 10th of May. This is the big one right here, 10th of May. It goes all the way over to nothing on whatever, I can't see it under the graphic. But like the 15th of March, they had 56,000 tests. There is nothing exponential about any of this. This is flat up just normal growth. This is normal production. There's no point in here where you could point to the instituting the DPA, any of that stuff.
And CDC with regard.
It's not logarithmical. This is strictly just like numerical production. This is like you make anything with and add to production a little bit. That's what's going to happen. And especially if you're stacking, so that let's be abundantly clear. Over these days, it's not on the 10th of May we're testing 8.9. That's what the illusion of this graph is. Look at this bullshit. Look at this bullshit. This gives you the illusion that on the 3rd of May, we tested 7 million people on the 3rd of May. And then the 10th of May, just a week later, we tested 8.9 million. This is cumulative.
Regard to testing.
This is the same, it's a step. This is if you're doing basically the same amount of testing all the time, there's a slight increase from the 26th to April 3rd, to May 3rd. And there's the similar step going from the 3rd of May to the 10th of May. This is not impressive. This This is intentional bullshit.
Since then, the
This is fake news.
nation has performed more than 9 million COVID-19 tests.
Yeah, not on the 10th of May, altogether since March.
A number far greater than any other country and double the per capita tests performed to date in South Korea.
Who cares about South Korea? Like, why? Just because that was the initial bellwether, then all the other countries that have outpaced us since then somehow don't count?
To reach this point, we implemented a phased
You do the math per dates, it's flat. Exactly. This is the same amount of production. It is like
approach to meet testing needs during mitigation and now during phase 1 reopening of America. Beginning March 20th, we pioneered 41 community-based drive-through testing sites.
Pioneered.
In locations prioritized.
You didn't pioneer shit. The South Koreans were already doing this. Pioneers. Buckle your hat to your head, you dipshit.
By the CDC. These sites have been a profound success.
Thank you, Amy
Testing
K.
Over 167,000 high-risk individuals and demonstrating a prototype that is being duplicated multifold in nearly every state.
Multifold. Jesus Christ.
Next, the administration leveraged trusted retailers, including CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, Walmart, Kroger, and Health Mart, who are now
69% of the live sites are located in counties with moderate to high social vulnerability. Retailer goal is to have over 1,000 locations performing tests in all 50 states by June 1st. So what? I'm not. All right. I don't give a shit what the retailer goal is. What is the U.S. government and the testing companies capable of doing? If you just have a tent in your parking lot and there aren't enough swabs and test kits and machines available to do these tests, who gives a shit how many people can drive through a parking lot?
now providing testing at 240 locations.
240. Retailer goal is to have 1,000 locations in 50 states by June 1st. By the way, 1,000 locations performing tests in all 50 states by June 1st. Look at this. Look what that's trying to say. This is, if you slippery read this, which is Trump's a big fan. Slippery reading of this is there's going to be 1,000 locations in every one of the 50 states by June 1st. That's slippery reading. That's what they're hoping you do. That's used in advertising all the time. So spread out over 50 states. Their goal is to have 1,000 locations by June 1st. That's what, 2.5 weeks away? Right.
In 33 states, 69% of which are in communities with moderate to high social vulnerability. To meet
which includes what? You're going to say African American and Hispanic communities, but what you really mean in terms of Hispanic communities is places where Hispanic workers work a lot in red states.
The need for collection supplies, like swabs and media tubes. We first secured the global supply chain through a military air bridge. We worked directly.
Operation Fighting Eagle. Operation. I didn't have my sound effects up. That's very sad. Operation Fighting Eagle.
With manufacturers to increase domestic production. We collaborated with the private sector and the FDA.
Oh, did you collaborate with them? What'd you do? Did you call them up and go, we need more swabs? And they go, we're making swabs as fast as we can. Okay, cool. Collaboration complete.
To
Over and out.
validate multiple swab and media types that vastly expanded supplies while minimizing the need for PPE.
No, it didn't.
Finally, we
haven't changed the collection method so far. We have a goal to change the collection method. You think the magic lollipop that Lamal was recommending is actually in process right now? It's not.
used Title III of the Defense Production Act to further invest in domestic manufacturing.
Yeah, to invest in manufacturing, forcing no one to do it. Like, the DPA is to insist through force of law that companies produce the materials necessary to support the country in times of need. This is just, they use the cash from the DPA. This is just another, these are, you know what these are normally referred to and what they were called during the beginning of the Iraq War? No-bid contracts.
Prepare us for reopening. To support the need
for
surveillance testing during reopening, on April 27th, we issued a new testing framework that also prioritized testing for persons without symptoms who are prioritized by health departments or clinicians for any reason, including screening of asymptomatic individuals according to state and local plans. Next,
And did that actually happen? No, it has not happened yet.
our federal multidisciplinary team conducted multiple calls with leadership from each state to set state-specific testing objectives.
This is Brett Grimoire.
Collectively,
Grimoire.
states and territories established an overall goal to perform 12.9 million tests over the next 4 weeks. The federal government is able to and will support the achievement of this goal.
No. Yeah, you have the 12.9 million is precisely the number of swabs they were able to secure. And not just the federal government, but that the states have done themselves. So you add the swabs the federal government came up with and the swabs that all the individual states have purchased for themselves, that's 12.9 million swabs. This isn't what they provided. This is not what he provided. This is not what Trump provided. This is all the ones bought for testing nationwide that were able to be secured. 12.9 million swabs. There are 26 million tests available as far as kits, but only 12.9 million swabs. And what they're counting is every single one of these swabs counts as a test.
Specifically, the federal government is shipping to states 12.9 million swabs.
No.
And over 9.7 million tubes of media in May alone.
No, that's not true.
Last month, we also detailed the location and capacity of every lab machine in every state
that has their own system in place.
Could potentially run COVID-19 assays. And our team has worked with test suppliers to match reagents to these machines. Looking forward, between now and the end of 2020,
we blame tomorrow.
The federal government will procure over 135 million swabs and 132 million tubes of media and distribute these to states as requested to supplement the now robust commercial supply. We anticipate marked increase.
Just because you interrupt purchasing that the states have done, you do not get to call it your own. If Rhode Island buys 20 million swabs for themselves, you do not get to call those federal swabs.
In current tests, as well as a dramatic expansion of new point-of-care tests, like the first-in-class Quidel antigen test, authorized by the FDA just last Friday.
Does it work?
Quidel anticipates being able to distribute 300,000 tests per day within just a few weeks.
So that's 60,000 wrong tests.
So by September, taking every aspect of development, authorization, manufacturing, and supply chain into consideration,
if you get tested 3 times, you'll probably be able to figure out if you actually have had or do have COVID-19. Kind of like early AIDS tests, which, when you're talking about AIDS treatments and cures, that only took 36 years.
We project that our nation will be capable of performing at least 40 to 50 million tests per month if needed at that time. And if new technologies are authorized, like whole genome sequencing approaches or any novel solutions uncovered by NIH's new diagnostics initiative,
that work,
that number will be much higher.
And so will the fail rate.
Finally, I want to acknowledge and
I love how every possibility they're presenting, all of it works.
Express my heartfelt gratitude to the officers of the U.S. Public Health Service Commission Corps.
No.
The uniformed service.
No. Those people are too dignified and work way too hard for you to use them as a human shield in your 5 minutes where you could leave off information.
I am honored to lead. 3,471 men and women have deployed in support of this pandemic.
Yeah, they're good people. We love them and support them. They're the ones actually getting in danger, and they're the ones who are being put in danger by the assholes who want to go out and crowd a Mother's Day restaurant.
On the cruise ship in Japan, to our military bases repatriating Americans, to our community-based testing sites and international airports, to FEMA and our task forces, to nursing facilities, including King County, Washington,
to Lee Greenwood,
and to field hospitals and hard-hit communities across our nation. I thank each and every one of these officers and their families, and on their behalf, I thank the members of this committee.
Why? Half those people don't want these people to be
For
protected.
supporting our
They think there's too much testing and too much focus on PPE.
training needs and the establishment
Jesus.
of a ready reserve
Is there a 5-minute
to
button?
supplement our ranks in future national emergencies. Thank you for the opportunity to provide these remarks.
Yeah, remarks is a good name for them. They're not facts, they're just remarks.
Thank you, Admiral Giroir. And
Giroir.
now Dr. Stephen Hahn, our fourth and
O'Hara's treachery has disgraced us.
final witness.
Chairman Alexander, Ranking Member Murray, and members of the committee, thank you for inviting me to participate in this hearing today. I first want to start by thanking the American people for their incredible efforts at mitigation and extend my condolences to those who have lost loved ones.
Why are you blurring out your background? And I'm going with you're using some form of Zoom, and that's not really your background. So you've put in the fake nice apartment and you're blurring it out as well. That makes me question what you're doing. Everybody knows I have a green screen up, but because nobody believes I live in a safe underground. Maybe I do.
From day one of this pandemic, the 18,000 FDA employees, who are just incredible scientists, doctors, and nurses, have taken an active role in the all
I'll have to look into that, Edward, in the chat.
government
Yeah.
response to this pandemic. FDA has worked to facilitate the development of medical countermeasures to diagnose, treat, and prevent COVID-19.
At least this heads up, and this could be just another angle when you're in the meeting.
We've worked closely with laboratories, manufacturers, academia, product developers, our federal partners, and companies. Companies that don't even make medical products but want to pitch in, for example, by making hand sanitizer, personal protective equipment, and ventilators. Every decision we have made have been driven by data with the goal of protecting the health of the American people.
That's a good freeze. Sorry about that, bruh. That's not your fault.
In a public health emergency, however, our response has balanced the urgent need to make medical products available with the provision of a level of oversight that helps ensure the safety and effectiveness of those medical products.
Right now, I'm sharing an apartment with Patrick Bateman, a person who is creating and managing our COVID response. If he walks by half naked in a see-through raincoat with an axe, you'll know why.
I'd like to take a few
Oh, happy birthday, Natalie. Yes, it's actual your birthday. Happy birthday to Natalie.
minutes to tell you what FDA is doing to help the country at this point,
Okay, go ahead.
and which Americans judge is safe to return to work and to school. It starts with testing, as others have mentioned. FDA has worked with more than 500 developers who have or said they will be submitting emergency use authorization requests for COVID-19 tests. This includes some newer technologies that heretofore have not been used as part of diagnostic tests and response.
I wonder if I could file for one for my comedy club performances and do shows and just go, everybody comes in and there's a lobby and you walk in, you get your test, and if you pass the test, you can come into the theater. His audio's very choppy or mine's very choppy? I mean, it could be either way. I don't know.
Response to a pandemic. We have issued 92 individual emergency use authorizations for test kit manufacturers and laboratories, and we've been informed by more than 250 laboratories they have begun testing under the regulatory flexibilities we outlined in March. We are conducting rolling reviews of EUA submissions so that we can quickly authorize tests in which the data support. In a public health emergency, the accuracy of diagnostic tests is important, not only for the individual patient, but for the patient at large, for the public.
The public at large, you mean?
At large.
All right, yeah.
FDA is helping to ensure the availability of.
Oh, my mic was getting hot and something wonky? Nothing changed. I don't understand why that would be. My audio gets choppy sometimes. I don't know why that would. Let me see. I'm going to have to listen to this and catch up and see on my own. Let me see, roll by this to the tail end and see where we are currently. I'll have to see what's happening right here. Let's do it.
The illusion that on the 3rd of
Oh, I see. I'm all hot.
7 million people on the...
That's right. I see what you mean. I'm just hot. I'm hot. I'm too hot. Too hot, lady. Too hot. too hot lady. Gotta run for cover. Gotta run for shame. It's too hot. Swapping mics. What happens is that once and see if this, let me know if this is better. This, it's mostly clear. It should be. Just sometimes I can get very hot. I can get very loud. I get very upset. And it's completely understandable, don't you know, that many people realize as we go forward. Let's see, I've got that turned down too as well. All right. And I got the noise reductions on. All right, just checking. Sounds okay to me in theory. Hope it sounds better. It's overmodulating. That happens. Wonder why that is. I just get very, very excited. I get carried away. Just get a little carried away. There's nothing I can do about it. I do need some. I got too many meters is the problem. I've got lots of meters. I'm metering all over the place. So let's do this. Let's take this and go down even further and see if that helps me out a little bit. Maybe that makes it a little nicer, hopefully. Oh, sure. Oh, well, I don't know. I do the Robin Williams test on it, huh? Oh, Mr. Happy.
Tests that are providing accurate answers. We are also monitoring
As long as you talk all soft, you're fine. Yes, that's the problem. I get too carried away. Oh, nano. I have been running a lot. I'm very hot. That's true.
the marketplace for fraudulent tests and are taking appropriate action to protect the public health.
Literally, because you are greenlighting so many tests and paying so little attention to what's going out the door that you have no idea how many fake tests are out there, and you're having to catch them because the public is letting you know.
And we are working to provide more clarity about which tests have been reviewed and authorized by FDA and which have not. Serologic tests will play a role in our recovery. Unlike diagnostic tests, which detect the presence of the virus, serologic tests measure the amount of...
It's going in and out. That's weird. Like I said, it sounds fine on my end, and I'm not quite sure what that is. Let me see if I can hear it. It's so hard to catch up with you guys. I know what that is. I see. Gotcha. All right. I think I know what's happening. Let's see. We'll turn that off. Let's see. I know yeah, I see what's happening. I think I know what's going on. This is just from my own, brain work. I think occasionally loopback freaks out.
Antibodies or protein present in the blood when the body is responding to an infection like COVID-19. These tests can help identify individuals who can overcome an infection and who have developed an immune response. We will continue working with labs, manufacturers, and across the government to find a balance between the assurance that an antibody test is accurate and timely access to such tests. Of course, the way we will eventually beat this virus is with a vaccine, and FDA is working closely with our Fed partners, including the NIH, vaccine developers, manufacturers, and experts across the globe. We intend to use our regulatory flexibility to help ensure the most efficient development of a safe and effective vaccine to prevent COVID-19.
Yes, you did hear me doing Robin Williams for a moment.
Until a preventative vaccine is approved, however, we need medical products to bridge the gap. FDA has been working for several months to facilitate the development and availability of therapeutics as expeditiously as possible. And we've created an emergency program for this acceleration.
Choppy as hell. So the FDA commissioner has great internet. We know that.
Called the Coronavirus Treatment Acceleration Program, or CTAP. We have reassigned staff to work with urgency to review requests from companies.
Hey, Richard, welcome.
Scientists, doctors who are developing therapies, and we're using every available authority and regulatory flexibility that's appropriate to facilitate the development of safe and effective products to treat COVID.
Yipe! What a horrible time to freeze. It looks like somebody beat him up. Does his eye look black? Is that just me?
19. A variety of therapeutic areas are being evaluated, as mentioned by Dr. Fauci and others.
Thank you. I do have very luxurious. I realize that I kind of look like the kid from Stranger Things, all grown up. But he kept his hair. Oh, well, don't you know? Hi, how are you? Don't hate me because I'm beautiful. All right.
Others, including antiviral drugs and immunotherapies, as well as convalescent plasma, hyperimmune globulin, and monoclonal antibodies.
You jerk. Do you see how I blazed through that? What? All right, we
Dr.
can't wait around.
Fauci also mentioned we recently announced
We got a half hour left, and we've only gotten through 40 minutes of this nonsense.
the positive results of the NIAID trial of remdesivir and issued an EUA for the development of products that our nation needs to get back to work.
Jibber
I look forward
jabber.
to your questions.
Thank you, Dr. Hahn, and thanks to
O'Hara's treachery has disgraced us.
all four of you for your expertise, for your dedication to our country, and your hard work. We'll now begin around.
Well, now, thank you for your hard work and your dedication to saving lives and working towards America. We'll now commence to let a bunch of know-it-all assholes from all over the country tear your work to shreds.
5-minute questions from each senator on the committee, alternating between Republicans and Democrats. Each senator has, if you're
Lamar Alexander.
by video conference, you have a little time clock at the bottom, and I would ask you to try to stay within 5 minutes for your questions and answers.
Or I have a special button installed on my desk that will give you a shock like none other. Wait, is that the cat all turned around, or is that the dog you guys were talking about? It is a dog. You're right. I think that's a dog. Did they swap positions?
We'll start. I've got a question for Dr. Fauci and then Admiral Giroir. Doctor, let's look down the road 3 months. There'll be about...
What? Well, let's look down the road 3 months when we can all blame tomorrow. Headley Lamar. What are you worried about? This is 1864. You'll be able to sue her.
5,000
Admiral Jerkwad. It's a trap.
Campuses across the country trying to welcome 20 million college students.
Back onto the Tennessee State University.
Public schools welcoming 50 million students. What would you say to the Chancellor of the University of Tennessee?
Why are you leaning away from me? Are you one cheek sneaking me, Lamar Alexander?
Knoxville, or
the dog moved,
or the president or the principal of a public school, about how to persuade parents and students to return to school.
Yeah, it looks like a Springer Spaniel, but it looks underfed.
In August. Let's start with treatments and vaccines first, Dr. Fauci, and if you could save about half of my 5 minutes for Admiral Giroir for testing, I would appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Well, I would be very realistic with the Chancellor and tell him that when we're thinking in terms...
It's a her in this case.
Oh, okay, I would tell her, I'm sorry, sir, that in this case, that the idea of having treatments available or a vaccine to facilitate the reentry of students into the fall term would be something that would be a bit of a bridge too far. As I mentioned, the drug that has shown some degree of efficacy,
remdesivir,
was modest, and it was in hospitalized patients, not yet or maybe ever to be used either yet as prophylaxis or treatment.
You dirty bastard.
So if the issue is that the young individuals who will be going back to school would like to have some comfort in that there's a treatment, probably the thing that would be closest to utilization then would likely be
electroshock therapy,
passive transfer of convalescent serum.
Yeah, it was going to be my next guess.
But we're really not talking about necessarily treating a student who gets ill, but how the student will feel safe in going back to school.
Or back home where they might kill their parents.
If this were a situation where we had a vaccine, that would
yes. Oh, remdesivir, you're too modest.
Really be the end of that issue in a positive way. But as I mentioned in my opening remarks, even at the top speed we're going, we don't see a vaccine playing in the ability of individuals to get back to school this term. What they really want is to know if they are safe. And that's the question that'll have to be due with what we discussed earlier about testing.
And the answer is no.
So I'm about halfway through the remarks. I'd like to just pass the baton to Admiral Giroir, who would address the question of the availability of testing and what role that might play in returning to school. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, Dr. Fauci. And Admiral Giroir,
is it safe?
You said that while we're doing about 10 million tests this month that we might be as high as 40 or 50 million by September, and
In total,
a month,
which is the exact same growth cycle.
which is a significant increase. So
No, it isn't. It's a normal increase.
if I'm chancellor,
If I open a Ford plant to make cars, I make one car today, and one car tomorrow, and one car the day after that, and one car the day after that. Then I have 4 cars on Saturday. I am not up to producing 4 cars a day every day starting Saturday. I now have made 4 cars. I am not now making 4 cars. Just see what I'm saying?
of the University of Tennessee, could I
Jesus.
develop a strategy where I'd say to all my students, we have, for example, an antigen test, which is quick and easy.
Maybe some of your students could explain the math to
You want
you.
everybody on campus to come by and take it once before you begin school. That will
And then once again tomorrow, and once again the day after
at
that.
least let everybody know that on that day we've isolated anybody who's positive, and then we can continue to monitor. Is that strategy possible in August and September?
So thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I may reserve 20 seconds for Dr. Redfield as well. The strategy that's going to be employed really depends heavily on what's the community spread at that time.
Moon River.
If there's almost no community spread, your
I never thought anybody could forget so much so fast without a severe blow to the head.
strategy will be different. If there's high community spread, it will also be different.
Moon River.
But yes, technically, we will have the ability, and your chancellor will have the ability. We expect there to be 25 to 30 million point-of-care tests per month available. It is certainly possible to test
Per month. Per month. Normal growth arc of developing these tests and putting them out on the market. Nothing extraordinary, nothing fast. This is bare minimum practical growth in the production of any frigging thing at all. This is embarrassing.
all the students, or it is much more likely that there would be a surveillance strategy done where you may test some of the students at different times to give an assurance that there's no circulation, and that would be done in conjunction with the CDC and the local health department. There's also strategies that are still needing to be validated, but of pooling samples. We know in some experimental labs as many as 10 or 20 samples can be pooled, so essentially one test could test 20 students. And finally,
would it be possible to have every student obtain a monkey trained to detect COVID sit on their shoulders all through class? You know what? We could probably develop that system faster than what they're doing.
there are some experimental approaches that look interesting, if not promising, that, for example, wastewater from an entire dorm or an entire segment of a campus.
Oh my God, they're going to check the shit of every student.
Be tested to determine
because it shows up in fecal material and semen.
Whether there's coronavirus in that sewerage, the wastewater. So there are other
What was that?
strategies being developed.
Speaking, Robert Redfield, did you see that? Redfield's mic came online.
And I'd like to at least give 20 seconds to Dr. Redfield, who really will be working on the strategy of how to employ the test given different community spread.
You using the whole fist, Doc?
Dr. Redfield?
Yeah, just some quick comments, sir. I mean, first, I think it's really important to evaluate critically the role of changes in social distancing on college campuses and schools and the situation, not to forget the importance of what we've learned.
We would like to establish the Elvis keep your pelvis far from me standard.
Clearly also developing an aggressive program for wellness education, making sure people understand when they're symptomatic. They need to seek evaluation.
You using the whole fist, Doc?
No, the problem with this is not knowing when you're symptomatic. It's asymptomatic spread.
I think you are going to have to look at the role of testing. I think there is going to be an important role of testing in this circumstances, and I think it will be
an important role of testing with an asymptomatic disease that kills randomly.
Be individualized based on where these different schools are, how much infection is in that.
I'm going to wrap it up there so I can set a good example for the other senators with their 5 minutes. Senator Murray.
All right, she's fine. We're gonna skip ahead because I don't like. I'd like us to be out at our normal time, and this is just gonna take forever. So I'll speed ahead. There's Senator Murray asked some questions. Then let's see, and we're rotating our Republican friends as well. So she'll hand that off. There's this one. Let's
How
see.
many we will need, not just for May, but in the coming months, so that we can be prepared to have them.
By the way, we all need to send Patty Murray a better microphone.
Yes, ma'am, and not to be repetitive, but we need to be
Like, you think I sound bad half the time.
evidence and data driven, because what we may see in May or June will drive differences in the amount of test goals we have. So we really just need to be very humble about this. We need to look at the data.
Really? Who are you talking to?
We know
Patty Murray needs to be humble about this? All right. Let's see this. This is
should we
Senator Enzi.
be working on this and preparing, but we need to look at the future too. And I think we've learned a lot. We're fighting a virus at the same time that scientists are learning about it. So we need to be.
Under what possible circumstance do you think we've learned a lot?
Nimble. We also need to be sure that
We need to be quick. We need to jump over the candlestick, perhaps.
we are prepared for a second wave of outbreaks that could coincide with the start of.
How did you manage to throw that bag onto that chair and have it stick to the chair? Oh, is there a strap? What kind of, is that a horse bag? You just threw it over the top of that chair, which apparently you got from the theater department of a high school?
The flu season, potentially stressing our healthcare system even more than it already has been. Admiral Giroir, I thank you for your comments. Comforting about what has been done and what can be done.
Yeah, I'm not interested in you being comforted. Let's move ahead. Here's Bernie Sanders. Hold on. Let's grab Sanders.
Senator Sanders.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And let me thank all of the panelists for the hard work they're doing and for being with us.
Wait, he has a Prince and the New Power Generation drum on his wall?
Today.
And a Red Hot Chili Peppers poster? Where the shit is Bernie Sanders right now? I'm not buying this. What? 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 What are you talking? What? Hold on. What? This is insanity.
It is sad to say that we have a president of the United States, the leader of our country, who from day one downplayed the dangers facing this country from the pandemic, who told us that the crisis would be over in a few months, that we did not have to worry.
I am doing this from my nephew's house, who has an amazing internet connection because he is a full-time gamer. It's his Zoom background. He's at Bernie Bar. Yeah.
Fired those members of the government who wanted to act aggressively, and among other things.
I don't know who in the world has an NPG drumhead on their wall and a Red Hot Chili Peppers thing and French furniture.
At a time when we need international.
What is that? What is going on here? And that red color, that's straight up like fame feng shui. Oh, that's real.
Cut funding for the World Health Organization. But let me also say that I think we understand that facts are terribly important.
He's got a haircut, by the way.
Not everybody that we don't fully understand.
I don't know what that is. It's so weird because it's fine and then it isn't.
All of the ramifications of the COVID-19 epidemic. But let me ask Dr. Fauci a few questions, if I might. For a start, the official statistic, Dr. Fauci, is that 80,000 Americans have died from the pandemic. There are some epidemiologists who suggest the number may be 50% higher than that. What do you think?
I'm not sure, Senator Sanders, if it's going to be 50% higher, but most of us feel that the number of deaths are likely higher than that number because given the situation, particularly in New York City, when they were really strapped with a very serious challenge to their healthcare system, that there may have been people who died at home who did have COVID who were not counted as COVID because they never really got to the hospital. So in direct answer to your question, I think you are correct that the number is likely higher. I don't know exactly what percent higher, but almost certainly it's higher.
Dr. Fauci, let me ask you this. In the terrible
See if let me see if this works a little better. Does the audio sound slightly better if I do this? It might be. It could be. It's possible. And I'm eliminating something in the whole process to see if that smooths it out. It always takes me a second before it reaches you guys to let me know about this. So it does sound better? Okay, cool. Like it.
pandemic of 1918.
Thank you, Benny Loco.
The virus.
No, if Bernie's into punk, then he's got the wrong thing on his wall. So this is someone else.
Exploded in the fall. It came back with a vengeance. Are we fearful that if we don't get our act together, as bad as the situation is now, it could become worse in the fall or winter?
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the major issues.
Well, Senator, thank you for that question. It's a frequently asked question. And I think that possibility does.
And thank you for the super chat, Benny Loco.
Exist. However, and the reason I say that is that when you talk about will this virus just disappear, and as I've said publicly many times, that is just not going to happen because it's such a highly transmissible virus.
It's not. Yeah, the whole idea that anything, especially an infectious disease, just disappears, if that comes to you from anybody but your Southern megachurch preacher, fire them immediately.
And even if we get better control over the summer months, it is likely that there will be virus somewhere on this planet that will eventually get back to us. So my approach towards the possibility of a rebound and a second wave in the fall is that A, it's entirely conceivable and possible that it would happen, but B, I would hope that between now and then, given the capability of doing the testing that you've heard from Admiral Giroir, and the ability of us to stock up on personal protective equipment and the workforce that the
if it takes a break during the summer, which there's no indication that it will.
CDC under Dr. Redfield will be putting forth to
that's if it's seasonal.
Be able to identify, isolate, and contact trace. I hope that if we do have the threat of a second wave, we will be able to deal with it very effectively to prevent it from becoming an outbreak, not only worse than now, but much, much less.
Okay, let me ask, we've heard a lot of discussion about vaccines. Obviously, everybody in Congress and in this country wants a vaccine. We want it as quickly as possible.
No, we want it actually to work. Quickly is, and again, I guess that's splitting hairs, because if it doesn't work, it's not a vaccine. It's a failed vaccine.
Effective as possible. Let me ask the Honorable FDA Commissioner, sir.
Dr. Hahn.
If, God willing, a
thank you, Kelly. I might need them.
Vaccine is developed, and if we're able to produce it as quickly as we all hope we can, I would imagine that that vaccine would be distributed to all people free of charge, or make sure at least that everybody in America who needs that vaccine will get it, regardless of their income. Is that a fair?
Yeah, because it's a highly contagious disease. It can bring down the entire economy, and it's a drop in the bucket investment to get it to everyone.
Assumption?
Senator, I certainly hope so. FDA is very committed to making sure that all populations in the United States, including those most vulnerable, are included in the clinical trials. And
well, that's not what I'm asking. What I'm asking is,
will it be free?
If and when the vaccine comes, it won't do somebody any good if they don't get it. And if they have to pay a sum of money for it in order to profit the drug companies, that will not be helpful. Are you guaranteeing the American people today that that vaccine will be available to all people?
No, we're going to charge through the nose for it and raise the price as much as possible, because everybody knows that if you've had the vaccine, you can care less what happens to the other people.
Regardless of their income.
No, this is our way of culling the herd so we can kill off all the poor people, aren't you? I mean, honestly.
Sir, the payment of vaccines is not a responsibility of FDA, but I'm glad to take this back to the task force. I share your concern that this needs to be made available to every American.
Does anybody else want to comment on that?
You mean like all the guys who want to actually keep people from getting it? Okay, let's hop ahead because I don't want to keep everybody in here forever because this is a long thing. To the lovely Rand Paul segment, shall we?
Is that if states or cities or regions, their attempt.
By the way, who chose this angle for Fauci? Are you just trying to make him smaller? Okay, we'll send him a camera so he can do this, but only if you mount it in the ceiling fan.
Understandable to get back to some form of normality.
Is he going to be tweeting directly from, streaming directly from the treehouse where they make the cookies, or?
Disregard to a greater or lesser degree the checkpoints that we put in our guidelines about when.
Yes, they are undercounting the dead and the dying. He mentions that earlier in this, by the way.
It is safe to proceed in pulling back on mitigation, because I feel if that occurs, there is a real.
You say Alfred E. Newman head like it's a bad thing.
Risk that you will trigger an outbreak that you may not be able to control, which in fact, paradoxically will set you back, not only leading to some suffering and death that could be avoided, but could even set you back on the road to trying to get
set me back
economic recovery, because it would almost turn the clock back rather than going forward. That is my major concern, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Mr.
And here, this is where it gets good.
Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Casey.
It's meant to make him look busy. He doesn't need any help with that. No matter what angle you shoot that office, he looks like he's busy and he's in the middle of a book.
Senator Paul.
It doesn't, this angle doesn't make them look busy. It looks like they were expecting a stripper and they never showed.
Dr. Fauci, scientists have shown that rhesus monkeys that are infected with COVID-19 cannot be reinfected. Several studies have also shown that plasma from recently infected coronavirus patients.
They weren't rhesus monkeys. They were, what was it, green monkey cells.
Neutralizes the virus in lab experiments. In addition, infusion of convalescent plasma is based on the idea that recovering coronavirus patients are developing immunity and that it can be beneficial as donated. Studies show that the recovering COVID-19 patients, from the asymptomatic to the very sick, are showing significant antibody response. Studies show that SARS and MERS, also coronaviruses, induce immunity for at least 2 to 3 years. And yet the media continues to report that we have no evidence that patients who survive coronavirus have immunity. I think actually the truth is the opposite. We have no evidence that survivors of coronavirus don't have immunity, and a great deal of evidence to suggest that they do.
To suggest.
The question of immunity is linked to health policy, and that workers who have gained immunity.
Rand Paul's suit has been freshly delivered to him from the cleaners. Meanwhile, his head is living in a van down by the river.
It can be a strong part of our economic recovery.
Yeah, you're a paragon of health.
Silver lining to so many infections in the meat processing industry is that a large portion of these workers now have immunity.
Yeah, which ones? You don't have serological tests to test everybody. Whose fault is that? Donald John Trump.
Those workers should be reassured that they likely won't get it again, instead of being alarmed by media reports that there is no evidence of immunity.
There's not no evidence of immunity. It's just not a guarantee. Testing needs to be done on that, and you don't want to send people back in just like you would, like false negatives are a problem.
You've stated publicly that you'd bet it all that survivors of coronavirus have some form of immunity.
Most people believe this. This is not the primary problem. The primary problem is the workers that are going in who are dying from it and the folks who are catching it, not the folks who can go back to work after they've weathered it.
Can you help set the record straight that the scientific record, as is being accumulated, is
the scientific record
supportive
is okay.
That infection with coronavirus likely leads to some form of immunity, Dr. Fauci?
Likely it does. Likely is like, are you going to bet your life on likely?
Yep. Thank you for the question, Senator Paul. Yes, you're correct that I have said that given what we know about the recovery from viruses such as coronaviruses in general, or even any infectious disease with very few exceptions, that when you have antibody present, it very likely indicates a degree of protection. I think it's in the semantics of how this is expressed when you say, has it been formally proven by long-term natural history studies, which is the only way that you can prove, one, is it protective, which I said and would repeat, is likely that it is, but also, what is the degree or titer of antibody that gives you that critical level of protection, and what is the durability?
Right. So if you had it and then you end up pushing back against it, like you have it for, what if it gives you 6 months of immunity and doesn't work with any of the other strains? And you think you can walk around freely, coughing and breathing all over people and not wearing masks and the like, and then it kills you.
As I've often said, and I again repeat, you can make a reasonable assumption that it would be protective, but natural history studies over a period of months to years will then tell you definitively if that's the case.
And I think that's important because in all likelihood is a good way of putting it. The vast majority of these people will have immunity instead of saying there is no evidence. The WHO kind of fed into this by saying no evidence of immunity.
Because there isn't evidence. Their job is to talk about the actual evidence, not the in all likelihood, dipshit.
And in reality,
in all likelihood, anybody who gets their eyes worked on by you will end up with an infection that kills them because you're the kind of doctor who makes up a group to give themselves awards. And those kind of doctors often end up harming their patients long term, in all likelihood. Is there any evidence of this? I don't know. I would need to see your records. But in all likelihood, you're an asshole.
There's every evidence stacking up. In fact, a lot of the different studies have shown that it is very unlikely that you get it again in the short term.
We can all only hope to look as healthy and vibrant as Rand Paul does right now.
With regard to going back to school, one thing that was left out of that discussion is mortality. I mean, shouldn't we at least be discussing what the mortality of children is?
Yeah.
This is for Dr. Fauci as well. The mortality between 0 and 18 in the New York data approaches 0. It's not going to be absolutely 0, but it almost approaches 0. Between 18 and 45, the mortality in New York was 10 out of 100,000. So really, we do need to be thinking.
Thank you, Rebecca. Appreciate that.
About that. We need to observe with an open mind what went on in Sweden, where the kids kept going to school. The mortality per capita in Sweden is actually less than France, less than Italy, less than Spain, less than Belgium, less than the Netherlands.
Where people have darker skin and require less vitamin D, and the people in Sweden get plenty of vitamin D because they eat a lot of oily fish and they have very, very light skin.
About the same as Switzerland, but basically I don't think there's...
Fauci created AIDS. Get out of here. Bye. Created AIDS. Go away.
Is anybody arguing that what happened in Sweden is an unacceptable result? I think people are intrigued by it, and we should be. I don't think any of us are certain when we do all these modelings. There have been more people wrong with modeling than right.
No, there haven't been. We're on track with the primary models. Primary models were 100,000 to 220,000 by August with full mitigation. We are now on track to that exact range of numbers by August with mitigation through the end of May. The only difference is we're turning off mitigation midway through May, which means that 140,000 number that we're staring at right now may very well likely go up. We're completely within that window. The 2.2 million number is if nobody did anything.
We're opening up a lot of economies around the U.S., and I hope that people who are predicting doom and gloom and saying, oh, we can't do this, there's going to be a surge, will admit that they were wrong if there isn't a surge.
No, because that's not their concern. Their concern is that if there is a surge, because that's like saying, all these assholes who told me the ice was thin, owe me an apology if I make it across.
Because I think that's what...
They're warning you of thin ice, dickhead.
It's going to happen. In rural states,
in all likelihood,
never really reached any sort of pandemic levels in...
It's still on the rise there, dummy.
Kentucky and other states. We have less deaths in Kentucky than we have in an average flu season. It's not to say this isn't deadly, But really, outside of New England, we've had a relatively benign course for this virus nationwide.
Because you're just starting.
And I think the one size fits all that we're going to have a national strategy and nobody's going to go to school is kind of ridiculous. We really ought to be doing it school district.
Like your head ridiculous, or just kind of ridiculous like, oh, that's silly?
By school district. And the power needs to be dispersed because people make wrong predictions. And really the history of this, when we look back, will be...
Which side of the wrong prediction do you want to err on? The one that kills more people? Or the one that... All right.
Of wrong prediction after wrong prediction after wrong prediction, starting with Ferguson in England. So I think we ought to have a little bit of humility in our belief that we know what's best for the economy. And as much...
Oh, the economy, right. I forgot what we were talking about. I thought we were talking about human lives for a second. My bad.
As I respect you, Dr. Fauci, I don't think you're the end all. I don't think you're the one person that gets to make a decision.
He's not making the decision. He advises the president on these issues from an epidemiological standpoint. That's his specialty.
And listen to your advice, but there are people on the other side saying there's not going to be...
What's the other side? What's the other side? Define other side. You mean the people who don't give a shit?
A surge, and that we can...
There are people who give a shit, and there are people who don't give a shit. We need to listen to people who don't give a shit.
And safely open the economy, and the facts will bear this out. But if we keep kids out of school for another year, what's going to happen is the poor and underprivileged kids who don't have a parent that's able to teach them at home are not going to learn for a full year. And I think we ought to look at the Swedish model, and we ought to look at letting our kids get back to school. I think it's a huge mistake if we don't open the schools in the fall.
Hey, and that's fun. The interesting thing, what's the interesting thing, guys? Let's think about this. What's the interesting thing about the Swedish model? Is that in general, the Swedish people are Swedish, and they're very white, and their skin is very light, and they produce a lot of vitamin D, and they eat a lot of oily fish, and their health overall is pretty strong insofar as their diet and their mortality rates from cardiovascular disease, obesity, those kind of things, which have been comorbidities with COVID-19. And curiously enough, that doesn't factor in anybody with browner skin than them in that factor. So maybe that's part of why Rand Paul doesn't give a shit if we jump right back in, because it was the folks that started showing up on courthouse steps didn't really start stampeding out there until all those news reports came out that this kills black and brown people a lot faster. All of a sudden he's like, what? Why don't we just then go for it?
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to that even though there are only 32 seconds left?
Yes, and you might make it clear whether or not you suggested that we shouldn't go back to school in the fall.
Well, first of all, Senator Paul, thank you for your comments. I have never made myself out to be the end-all and only voice in this. I'm a scientist, a physician, and a public health official. I give advice according to the best scientific evidence. There are a number of other people who come into that and give advice that are more related to the things that you spoke about.
Like, what do you mean, like Glenn Beck or...
the need to get the country back open again and economically.
Paula White?
I don't give advice about economic things. I don't give advice about anything other than public health. So I wanted to respond to that. The second thing is that you use the word we should be humble about what we don't know. And I think that falls under the fact that we don't know everything about this virus. And we really better be very careful, particularly when it comes to children, because the more and more we learn, we're seeing things about what this virus can do that we didn't see from the studies in China or in Europe. For example, right now, children...
By the way, congrats, William, in the chat room for your daughter graduating high school today. Or William, yeah. William O'Connor, congratulations on your daughter graduating.
Children presenting with COVID-19 who actually have a very strange inflammatory syndrome, very similar to Kawasaki's syndrome. I think we better be careful if we are not cavalier in thinking that children are completely immune to the deleterious effects. So again, you're right in the numbers that children in general do much, much better than adults and the elderly, and particularly those with underlying conditions. But I am very careful and hopefully humble in knowing that I don't know everything about this disease, and that's why I'm very reserved in making broad predictions. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Paul and Senator Baldwin.
Jesus. What? And by the way, do you notice how he made his thing was 4.5 minutes of his thing was just statements, and then at the tail end of it was an accusation and not a question? we're going to roll through to Susan Collins, who is in the fight of her life for her seat.
Direct guidelines for dental practices.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Dr. Jura and Dr. Hahn.
O'Hara's treachery has disgraced us.
Recently, there's been a significant demand for remdesivir.
Remdesivir.
I may be mispronouncing it.
That's okay. Go with the president's version. Remdesivir.
Which transitioned to receiving an emergency use authorization. Last week, Maine's two largest hospital systems contacted me with questions about how this therapeutic will be allocated going forward.
Because there's not enough of it.
HHS.
Because we bought 29 million doses of hydroxychloroquine and none of the remdesivir. That literally, the science looking into both of these drugs was happening at the same time. Trump even mentioned both of these at the exact same time in his first, when everybody went on about how he recommended hydroxychloroquine. He mentioned remdesivir in the same one, and he didn't mention remdesivir after that for a while, except when he screwed it up and called it Dvoir. And went off on this tangent about hydroxychloroquine. Later on, if you'll notice, he added zinc to it, over-the-counter zinc supplements. There is, it is a functional treatment, at least insofar as for, hardcore wiped out people, helping to shorten their time in the hospital. It doesn't cure anything. It just limits the time they spend in there, which is what remdesivir does and keeps them off the ventilator. Hydroxychloroquine with zinc, over-the-counter zinc added to it, together almost works as well as remdesivir by itself. The problem is you can produce a shit ton of hydroxychloroquine and all the zinc you want, but neither one of them together, they don't work as well as remdesivir, which is harder to produce. And if he'd have worked on producing remdesivir and used the DPA to heighten production of it, force other labs, because it's a specific drug from Gilead, if they forced other labs, other pharmaceutical companies to make remdesivir, there'd be enough treatments that would have made up for this.
Finally released a statement.
William, well, we're very proud of your daughter, and it's an amazing thing. And you know what really made you tear up? Is the fact that your daughter graduated high school. That you did it. You did it.
On Saturday about allocations going to states, interestingly, not directly to hospitals. But once again, the decision-making behind these allocations is very unclear.
Yeah, why is Jared hoarding remdesivir?
HHS and the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response say that each state is expected to receive an allocation, but no timetable has been provided.
Yeah, because they don't know.
Beyond those who are being treated with this drug at Maine Medical Center through a clinical trial, I'm concerned that hospitalized patients in Maine will have little or no ability to be treated with this promising therapeutic for the foreseeable future.
They won't. You know why? Because the president didn't use the DPA to increase production of that and or testing kits and reagents and swabs.
As this and more therapeutics and ultimately a vaccine come onto the marketplace, how can these allocation and distribution issues be resolved?
Now, it's not protein powder. I think those are wipes on the table.
Solved so that patient care
Those are Lysol wipes, or there's something equivalent.
is not delayed, and so that it doesn't depend on which state you live in, whether or not you're going to get access to these treatments and ultimately a vaccine.
Those aren't unrelated. Two totally different tracks. Treatments versus vaccines and the availability, even the making of them is a totally different process. Much less testing. Yeah, everybody, give us a thumbs up. We're almost near the end of the show. I'm going to rush through the last couple of things, and we all know mainly what the response was in this.
Senator Collins,
But yeah, and that's Collins is always like that. She's got, I mean, effectively, I think it's tardive dyskinesia, a mild form of it.
Oh, go ahead, Admiral Joa.
Go ahead, Commissioner.
This is going well.
Senator Collins, I think we completely agree with you that this has to be an evidence-based approach, getting the medical therapeutics, vaccines, remdesivir, whichever it happens to be, to the people in need. I think we can all agree upon the fact that we learned a lot of lessons from the
No, you haven't.
remdesivir situation. And
No, you haven't.
of course, as you mentioned, that's being
Why would you think for a friggin' second that you have learned anything from the remdesivir situation? The president could have ordered the Defense Production Act to insist on the Gilead producing extra doses of remdesivir 2 months ago, 60 days ago. And as it stands, at full production, they're only going to be able to come up with about 1.5 million doses.
being led by HHS.
Bullshit.
And ASPR. What you've seen in the most recent announcement is that
Thank you, Ninka Crinkles.
that what the task force did was provide guidance to HHS regarding where the most significant outbreak occurred and where those hospitalized patients were.
I will have a cup of coffee on you, Ninka Crinkles. That's true.
This represented about a quarter of the supply of drug that we have, and more will be allocated according to the methodology that gets drug to where those hospitalized patients are. I think valuable lessons can be learned and will be learned with respect to other therapies.
Based on what?
And to vaccines in particular, and we must incorporate those into our operational plans moving forward.
No, you can't put them into your operational plans moving forward because you don't know which one will work and when. There's a huge difference between vetted drugs, unvetted drugs, and vaccines as they go through the process. The vaccine as it goes through a process may or may not be viable for broader testing by August or September. That's the most you can hope for. Fastest possible version, right? That's the best you can hope for. Right now, you have viable and unviable, tested and untested treatments for people who become violently ill from COVID-19, requiring hospitalization and ventilators and all that other shit. Of the treatments so far that have been found, besides just pumping every possible antibacterial and antiviral drug that exists into their system, remdesivir showed some efficacy in South Korea and in France and in Spain, where they were using it quite regularly. So at the same time that happened, hydroxychloroquine was like this fantasy drug that they were throwing down people's gullets all over the place because it was free and sitting there, and they tried it in China, and it didn't help at all. It ended up killing more people. It made it either did nothing or it made it worse. In the best case scenario, it did nothing, and people just got better because they were going to get better. It wasn't part of what's going on, and it's not like they just guess. They can look at your system and go, oh, this protein started to break down because you were taking this. Because you took hydroxychloroquine, it tore the antlers off of the coronavirus, and therefore it couldn't attach to shit. And so you can look at that after the fact and go, which treatment that we were adding to people worked? Remdesivir, they could find the track of why it worked, and it was basically stopping the cytokine storm that was killing people, that was overwhelming it. Because in the case of coronaviruses, a lot of times it's the overreaction. That's what the inflammation problem with the kids is. Your immune system freaks out and murders you. And what you can learn from this is look at the actual tested stuff that's actually functioning across the world, interact with all the health departments and the World Health Organization groups that are actually gathering the best info on treatments, and order your treatment drugs for the country based on best practices and the tests that actually work, instead of the president just hears some random shit from a buddy of his and now we got 29 million doses of hydroxychloroquine.
Thank you, Doctor.
You're welcome. I'm not a doctor, but I play one on TV.
Admiral, do you have anything to add? I'm over time.
Admiral Jew? Wait a minute. He's not.
Sorry.
Oh, do you? I see.
Thank you. If you have anything to add, if you do so for the record.
No, ma'am. No, ma'am. I agree with the commissioner.
Older Americans. I guess my question, though, is what about children? Does it include children? Does it also include the obese, the diabetic, the immunocompromised, those who are at risk of having a a non-response or a mitigated response to vaccination? Can you comment on that, please?
Oh.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Senator Cassidy. When the phase 2, phase 3 trials are in place, they will include our most vulnerable populations, including the individuals that you described. We're working very close.
Yeah, whatever. We'll sign off on this last one. Somebody who I think we all know learned some of the lessons of the remdesivir hydroxychloroquine testing and well, I would say arguably the economic lessons of disaster econ.
You can see many people.
By the way, this is your last chance to get in your super chats and perhaps become a patron. You know, patreon.com/HalSparks. I know I don't have this in there, but is that what's going to happen? Like every time somebody puts a random carrot in there, I'm just going to have to do the whole.
We're honored to have with us today our amazing Vice President, Mike Pence, and his wonderful wife, Carrot.
So we're almost done, Natalie. Cheers. Take care of yourself and take care of somebody else and pet the cat for me. And happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Kelly Loeffler.
Out there with masks on.
Who sold a bunch of stock right before all this
some
happened.
degree of comfort that people are taking this very seriously.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Houston DeRozan, Senator Loeffler.
For as long as you're going to be here. Tell us a little bit, like, any stock tips? Any tips? Any tips you got? Any tips? I'm just trying to come up a little bit, you know.
Thank you all for being here and for
I'm glad to be here. Thanks very much.
your service. Admiral Giroir, before I start my questions, I want to recognize your new role as the U.S. representative to the World Health Organization. Mitigating a resurgence of this pandemic will take global cooperation. In order to do that, we need accountability and transparency at the WHO.
And so we're putting him in charge? Great. Okay. I feel much better. Thank you, Amber.
This organization was established to ensure the timely flow of accurate, unbiased information on global health emergencies just as this. Reforms must be made in order to restore the trust that we need here. I hope you'll work with our allies to push for these reforms. This question, I have two questions. The first one is for Dr. Redfield. And Dr. Redfield, Georgians are wondering how we got here today. 1,400 deaths.
Jesus, is there a dog barking in the background or is somebody being attacked?
A third of Georgia's workforce out of work. I'm incredibly concerned about the cover-up and the misinformation coming from China and their efforts to suppress life-saving information at the outset of this outbreak. As we continue to reopen our economy safely, we have to take steps to ensure that another outbreak cannot take hold of the world in this way. I understand.
Maybe, I know what it would have, a pandemic response to, that's stupid.
CDC has worked with the Chinese CDC on global health security for decades. Can you comment on the level and
Thank you, Jill Carter.
And the timing of the information that you received and relied upon from your Chinese counterparts as this virus emerged?
Well,
I didn't get any stock tips, that's for sure. You'd think they would have.
Thank you very much, Senator. And I want to echo how important global health security is as a national security priority for this nation.
Which is why we cut funding to the WHO and instead of, using the power of the fact that we do give them money as a
nation.
All right.
And we're going to need to be able to respond to that as long as we are a nation. CDC is
as long as we are a nation. Wait, is there a shelf life?
Had relationships with
what is this? Some new world order bullshit?
Countries around the world. We have.
What do you mean? As long as we're a nation?
Offices in over 45 countries.
We are a part of the COVID nation.
Right now, people in over 60. And one of those happens to be China, where we have a U.S. CDC that's with the Chinese CDC. We've worked together for decades, particularly on influenza and emergent infectious diseases. And that has been a very productive, collaborative, scientific to scientific interaction.
Yeah, don't tell me that. I know that.
When this original outbreak of
Just cutting to him. Don't screw it up. Don't screw it up, buddy.
pneumonia of unknown
Thank you,
etiology
Jacqueline.
came from
Merci beaucoup.
the original
Jacqueline.
seafood market. There were obviously discussions with the U.S. personnel that were engaging with this Chinese CDC. I personally had discussions as early, I think CDC did as early as January, and myself January 3rd. With
That's weird. January 3rd. So you had discussions with the Chinese about the danger of this disease and its spread and all those others as early as January 3rd. January 3rd. And the president, when was the president told? What, you waited how long to tell the president or intel people to, the same time. Oh, the same day. Oh, that's interesting.
Counterpart to discuss this. So at a scientific.
By the way, in case you're wondering, Kelly Loeffler has sold nearly all of her stock. And she's using the fact that she's covered, by a, the scandal popped up. So she's like, I'm just dumping stock just so it's not a problem anymore. Meanwhile, her husband, who's on the stock exchange, is going to just buy it all back.
Level, we had very good interaction.
That's all that happened. She sold it. He bought it. He's sitting on it.
I think, that's different than
they're getting the same price. You do it in the same hour.
The broader Chinese government level.
Thank you, Dr. Redfield. I have a final question for each of our great witnesses today, and it's one that my constituents often ask me. The mainstream media, and indeed some of my colleagues.
I have a question for you.
How, in the name of Zeus's butthole, did you get out of your cell?
Colleagues in the Senate seem to want to paint each of your relationships.
I'm itching to use that normally.
With our president during this wartime effort as confrontational and lacking consensus.
Thank you, Arlene.
Can you categorically say here to the American people today whether this is true or untrue? From your testimony today, I've seen a very coordinated effort to address this with the administration to combat this pandemic. Can you give me a sense of whether what the characterization is, whether it's true or untrue?
Well, as we take stock in our situation, I'm sorry, what I'm saying is from a viral point of view, we want to buy low, sell high. If you think, it's a bad analogy. I'm sorry. What you're trying to do is I put a put on American health and, God damn it.
I'd ask Dr. Fauci to answer that first.
Yes, no, there is certainly not a confrontational relationship between me and the president.
No, absolutely not. You can't confront him. You're sequestered in your office. Thank you, Gary.
As I mentioned many times, I give advice.
She's got awful, Gary, in answer to your question, because she can be.
Opinion based on evidence-based scientific information.
Which he is allergic to. I didn't realize that. It's like a peanut allergy, but with reality.
He hears that. He respects it. He gets opinions from a variety of other people.
And when we say people, I mean odd friends of his who live on pervert islands.
But in no way, in my experience over the last several months, has there been any confrontational relationship between us.
No, he just fumes and tweets "Fire Fauci" from the shitter.
Thank you, Dr. Redfield. Dr. Hahn.
Horror's treachery has disgraced us. Dr. Hahn, I suddenly like to leave your island.
Again, I would echo what Dr. Fauci said. We're there to give our best public health advice.
And he's there to take a big shit on it.
And that's what we do. It's grounded in data and science. I've always...
And I'm rocking back and forth like a child who's trying to find a happy place.
Felt free to give the best public health advice that I think needs to be given at the time, and it's always been done in a very professional way.
And hopefully one day
Senator Loeffler, this is Steve Hahn.
O'Hara's treachery has disgraced us.
I do not have a confrontational relationship, have not had a confrontational
No, you have an ass kisser's relationship with him. Nobody thinks you have one.
relationship with the president.
The only one we're worried about is Fauci. We all know, like, that's like asking Burks. The fact that no one punched him when he suggested injecting disinfectant into people's lungs shows that you don't have a confrontational. Fauci wasn't present when that happened.
Questions, I have given him my honest answers rooted in data and science.
And by data, I mean, honestly.
And he has listened respectfully to those, incorporating that into his decision making.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could tell by the toilet flushing sound.
And Brett Joie, I have nothing else but to echo my comments.
Yeah, Brett, believe me, Admiral, no one thinks that you have a confrontational relationship with the president.
We work
No one. You're there at your office.
closely together, all the scientists, all the physicians, of course, Ambassador Burks, other scientists within our group.
Yes, he did fire the IG and Dr. Bright.
We have a very productive working relationship with each other and also with the president and vice president. It would not be confrontational, and I certainly feel that we have the ability to honestly state our opinions and recommendations.
That's because you were handpicked to not have any recommendations or opinions that are outside the realm of comfort for this president. See that? You're not going to even think of stuff that would piss him off because you were brought in because you already agree with him. Do you understand how that works? You can't think of ways, you don't argue with yourself. Why would you be arguing with him?
And that's been that way since the beginning.
No, Burks is not in there today.
Thank you, Senator Loeffler. Senator Murray, do you have closing comments?
We don't need those, but we'll go to Lamar.
Modest, but they're promising. There could be more.
I don't know. Look at that puppy. Literally, Lamar Alexander. This is the biggest distraction I've ever seen in my life. Lamar Alexander is giving his closing thing, but he's literally leaning in the shot so we can all see the sleeping Brittany Spaniel that is laying on a folded blanket now. That dog don't hunt. That dog just naps.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't go back to school.
Just because you don't want to die.
That would be
As we say in my family, education is a part of death.
Or a testing strategy.
Sorry, I get those confused. Death is a part of education. I don't know. I didn't go to school for living.
Am I right, Dr. Fauci? You didn't say you shouldn't go back to school because we won't have vaccine.
Because we won't have a vaccine. You don't need a vaccine to go back to school. That's not what you're saying. No, we all listen to him, dummy. But getting him to say that again doesn't mean you get to skip past all the things he said about testing and tracing.
No, absolutely not, Mr. Chairman. What I was
By the way, I would not have been surprised if Fauci's voice was actually coming from that dog.
referring to is that going back to school would be more in the realm of knowing the landscape of infection with regard to testing. And as Admiral Giroir said, it would depend on the dynamics of the outbreak in the region where the school is.
Hold on.
Man's got to know his limitations. I did not mean to imply at all any relationship between the availability of a vaccine and treatment and our ability to go back to school. You're quite correct.
He didn't say that. Fauci, pay attention. He's not saying you said that. He's just making sure the people listening erase every warning you've said by covering his own ass in the future by getting you to say what you just said.
And what I heard from Admiral Giroir was that
oh my God, now we're running on what you heard from people.
You're ramping up.
Hey, Dwight.
Current technologies.
Hi, TLK Knitting. Thank you.
You are hopeful for Dr. Collins' Shark Tank and the National Institutes of Health, but in any event,
for Red X, bruh. Hold on. Red X. Yeah. The Shark Tank of cures. Red X. Come on now. All right.
You would
And we're gonna
expect
do
to
that
have
every
the
time.
capacity in the fall of 40 to 50 million tests a month. And that ought to be adequate for the principal of a middle school or even the chancellor of a campus to design a testing strategy that could provide, for example, an antigen quick test to screen all the students in the school if necessary. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. And again, we want to
In the school that already bought all those tests.
make as many tests available as absolutely possible. What I said is what I feel comfortable with, knowing.
Dude, what you're comfortable with makes us all worry. I'm just saying. No one. What? Yeah.
Moon River. The production schedules, being in the position of being able to work
And yes, there is a lice removal product called Rid-X.
with the FDA and CDC.
Not to be confused with Rad-X.
That
Sorry, I beg your pardon. What I meant to say was not to be confused with Rad-X. Rad-X. That's right. The Shark Tank of treatments. Get your hydroxychloroquine at half price. All right.
we should have 40 to 50. We will have 40 to 50 million tests available per month that need to be deployed in a smart, strategic way, depending on the dynamics, in that area and in that region.
And what the states buy for themselves?
Still, having testing even widely does not nullify the need that we're going to have to change our practices in terms of sanitation, personal cleanliness, distancing, face masks, things like that, given what the dynamics could be.
Well, thank you for those comments.
Thank you for reminding us that we're going to have to do all our mitigation activities when no one is doing them. That's great.
That's because given that number of tests that will be available in, say, 3 months, or as we ramp
What is that dog thinking?
up to that number 3 months from now, that should give every principal, every chancellor of every college campus, and again, we have about 5,000.
Why is Lamar Alexander's complete fixation on just schools going back in the fall?
Campuses and 100,000 schools, some reassurance that testing, as well as the common sense hygiene practices you talked about, could be used to develop a strategy for reopening school in August.
Drop your shorts and bend over, Mr. Babar.
Absolutely, we have a strategy.
Comments. One is Senator Murray talked about the national plan, which was in the legislation that we all voted for. There's a little bit of a push and tug between what's national and what's federal, what Washington should do and what the
What's national and what's federal? You mean what's state and what's federal?
state
Okay.
should do. I've always thought it's a mistake to say federal equals national. In other words,
It does. It does. Federal does equal national. That's the national strategy, combining all the states. States have individual needs, individual wants, individual economies, all those kind of things. And we, what's the word? Unite those states. Jesus Christ.
COVID-19 is clearly a national problem,
Uh-huh.
but that doesn't mean the federal government's supposed to do everything. For example,
No, it's not. But it's supposed to help coordinate everything so that the rich states don't buy out all the shit and the poor states don't have all their citizens die, which is what's going to happen. And when you red state clowns are complaining in the fall because there aren't enough available stuff because the big states, you have to go begging at the soup bowl of New York and California, you're going to blame the White House? No, I don't think so. You're going to kiss his ass and say that it's the system.
in testing,
The deep state.
the law actually requires states to tell you, Admiral Giroir, what their plans are, what their needs are. And then you said that during the month of May, you had a series of state plans that identified 12.5 million tests, and you thought you could help meet that. On the other hand, you've also...
No, there's 12.5 million swabs, and he's counting every swab as a completed functional test.
also noticed a deficiency in the marketplace
Never mind how many reagents there are, or kits, or the availability of labs.
for some supplies, so the federal government is buying those and allocating them to the states. So we don't want to get in a situation where Admiral Giroir is telling all the states what to do, Governor Lee, in Tennessee doesn't really want you to tell him what to do. He wants to tell you what
Well, tough shit, buddy. You didn't pay for the swabs, we did.
he's doing.
I'll tell you what happened. California bought all the swabs, and so did New York.
And let you comment on it. I don't think Governor Cuomo wants President Trump telling him what to do.
He doesn't have to. He went and did his own thing. He formed a 6-state coalition to buy all the necessary swabs and reagents that they needed themselves.
So
most of those interior labs in those states, they knew exactly where they were.
The push and tug between what Washington does and what the states do, I think we have a testing, contact tracing, isolating national strategy and plan led by the governors.
He's literally leaning so we see the dog.
Designed by the federal government as a national effort. And then the national effort clearly is to do the research for the treatments and the vaccines. And what we've heard today is that's coming along on a faster track than we've ever seen.
Yeah, you know why? Because of certain companies that are ahead of it anyways, have been working on COVID related, like coronavirus related cures and vaccines for years. They're kind of fast tracking those with the money that they have and the clearance from the FDA that they're getting. But those are in individual states. You know which states they're in? New York and California. That's right. And some of them are in even South Carolina, if you want a southern state. But those are individual states. And those individual states where those labs are creating it, that's not where they're going to be produced. Like South Carolina doesn't have the capacity to create enough testing supplies for the entire country. But you know what? Who does? The world market. You know who's going to buy them all up off the world market? New York and California. You know who's going to have enough for their citizens? New York and California. You know who's going to be screwed? Kansas, Nebraska, South Dakota, Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, and Florida.
Seen before. Finally, I want to reiterate, I thought this was a very helpful hearing. I thank the senators for their questions. I think anybody who took the time to watch would be impressed by the diversity of opinion.
Yeah, that's what we are. I'm impressed by the diversity of opinion from people who are going, I should be concerned about a disease, and we need to set up a plan for the the intricate work of reintroducing people back into the economy safely in the midst of a pandemic. To, I don't know, can't we just shrug this shit off? Like the diversity of opinion.
And the honest answers we got from 4 really remarkable experts who are in the midst of this every day. I want to reemphasize what I said earlier, that
oh, good.
I intend to make sure that we focus. Senator Murray suggested we need to have more hearings. I agree with her. And as we deal with this pandemic, we need to make sure we're ready for the next one. What can we learn about faster treatments and vaccines for the next one? What can we learn about the stockpile? What ought to be in it? Who ought to be manage it for the next one? What can we learn? Can we learn anything about having
Probably
hospital
not.
beds so we don't have to shut down hospitals and bankrupt them and push patients out in order to create beds for sick people from the pandemic? What about
Probably not.
states and hospitals that sell off their PPE in between pandemics? How do we keep our focus in between pandemics when have so many important
I mean, you can't just have a dog sitting there.
things to be worried about in this country? How do we make sure that we in Congress sustain and fund all the things that we need to do? So, and I want to make sure that we do that this year. I mean, our
As opposed to,
collective memory is short.
why don't we just stop until next year?
So while we're all worried about this, we need to not only deal with this crisis, but get ready for the next one.
Get ready for the next one, because as long as Donald Trump is in office, we're in danger of another giant pandemic or hurricane. I mean, we have tropical storms already gathering. You do realize that life goes on and other shit happens, right? We're going to finish this up right about the time there's a hurricane, and we're going to go through another. Oh, did the dog fart? Oh, you little. Oh, kiddo. We got to change your kibble.
I thank the witnesses for their extra time. I hope they get a sense that our job, we see, is to create an environment in which you can succeed, because if
Yeah. Did Rand Paul already leave the room?
you succeed, our country succeeds, which is what
No, that dog don't hunt. Not at all.
we desperately want.
That dog barks at the mailman like he's a marauder with a pitchfork, and occasionally poops on the rug if he's mad, will develop a skin condition when he's older and have some sort of weird bulbous growth on his neck. And every time he gets mad, his eyes roll back in his head. He goes, but the rest of the time, adorable.
The hearing record will remain open for 10 days. Members may submit additional information for the record within that time if they would like.
Great. So Rand Paul can just hook up the QAnon Reddit right to the whole thing?
Thanks
Okay, good.
to everyone for being here today. The hearing is adjourned.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you,
Thanks.
Senator Murray.
For more information on coverage of committee hearings, contact the Senate Recording Studio, 202-224-4977, United States. I might have to call that number and see if I can get a direct camera put in there, I think. Yeah, that dog is definitely medicated. You guys are wonderful. Thank you guys for dropping by. I appreciate it. Thank you guys, everybody who super chatted today. You guys are fantastic. I greatly appreciate it. It was lovely. In my other software, I can go through and review it. Take a chance. If you're a patron, I put a new link for the Discord is in there. We also have the general Discord as well. Links have been up in there. And as Can't Stop Lying always reminds us, let someone you love know it and take no one for granted. Reach out to somebody during this. Be very careful. If you're going out, gloves, mask, act like you're out to commit a murder in a world full of murderers. That's what I do. So take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else. I'm going to go work on my stream a little bit more, and I will be gaming a little. Oh, look at that. Thank you so much. The tip jar thing was working gangbusters today, I will say. That was lovely. So appreciate that. Patreon.com/HalSparks is the number if you want to support the show. Price of a guide. So they and a guest get to come to a free stand-up show when I come to their town. And if I don't come to your town, I post monthly a new comedy show, material 100% and only to the patrons first. So on those, I haven't posted them anywhere else yet. I might start posting them now after a lot of time has passed because people need entertainment. But in the process, yeah, take care of yourself and take care of somebody else. I appreciate you guys, and I will see you again.